All right, welcome to Magic Without Fears, the Hermetic podcast. Today I have a very special and very greatly honored guest with me, Christine Zalewski, the co-author of books such as The Magical Tarot of the Golden Dawn, and of course, her most famous work, Enochian Chess of the Golden Dawn, which I know everyone's excited to hear more about. So, welcome, Chris, to the Frater RC show, as people have encouraged me to call it. They say, you should just call it the Frater RC show. I was like, I like that name better than Magic Without Fears, actually. Let's go with that. But no, it's just an honor to have you here and get to talk with you about, yeah, the work that you've done that I've studied for most of my life, and that the tradition that you are a living legend in over there in New Zealand. So how are you today, and how are things somewhat down under in on the other part of the world?
Well, actually, hearing the word living legend is kind of strange to me because in New Zealand, nobody wants to know you on your own doorstep. And so I have been comfortably ignored for many, many years and just got on with my own life.
There's something nice about that, though, I'm sure.
Mm,
To
yeah. Uh, so it's sort of, I don't sort of see myself as a living legend.
That's probably what qualifies you most for the term of endearment, shall we call it. It's when I think about that, it is an interesting phrase. And what does it mean to, it's an interesting phrase. And what it means to me is, you represent ideals that, or how is it? I don't know. It's an interesting phrase, but you definitely, I think it's when, we're just parsing it out live here on air. Um, what is the living legend? Well, it's because it's not like you aren't a human being. You're still a human being, but you've done something special or gotten to participate in a history that is special to many, many people, and you became a part of that history, even though you were just living your own life, and in living just being who you were, you ended up playing roles that have become super important to people like me who've benefited from your work, but also from your legacy. Um, it's not just the books that you put out or the things you dedicated your life to and are still dedicating your life to, because you've got new stuff coming out you've mentioned, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Just tease it now. I know you can't tell too much about what it is, but that's the fun part. That's the fun part. We'll talk around it. So, you ended up getting to, so for some people, even in the Golden Dawn world, might not be too familiar with who you are and what your story is. So maybe we could jump back to New Zealand back in the day, and how this all got started when you first went to Hawke's Bay and connected with the final temple of the Golden Dawn tradition in
Yeah,
at
yeah,
Frater
I'll
And
rattle on.
I'm sure people are even curious to see how you say certain names like Frater and stuff like that have been pronounced and mispronounced every which way imaginable, of course, as we do with these words. But yeah, how did you end up there back in the day?
Well, I grew up in that area. I
Okay.
lived in Hawke's Bay, not far from Havelock, which is a small village just outside of where we lived. In fact, we lived on some land in the back of Hastings. And I didn't know about the existence of Vajra course during my growing up years because my family were not into that sort of thing and barely had anything to do with going to church. That sort of lasted for a very short time when I was a child. Uh, so my connections to the Whaira was quite strange how it unfolded. It was almost like we were being guided and it was meant to be. And my growing up years, I sort of have a background of a history of a family who, on my mother's side, that had sort of mystical psychic abilities, and we were fae, basically, from Scotland. And so my mother, she dowsed her racehorses to work out what bet to make. And she did quite well. She actually ended up buying the land and property and building a house through her winnings. So dowsing
Dowsing
was just part of
racehorses.
my life. Yeah, yeah, dowsed them, which
Wow.
was where they were going to place. It wasn't always accurate, but she did quite well. And so I grew up with a natural thing of, oh, this is just part of our lives, being able to douse and look into things on another level. And there was all sorts of other strange mystical experiences I had in my childhood. But so when I finally shifted to Wellington, and that was sort of after I met Pat, my sister was living next door to him. So I went to visit her. And so the journey I started with the Golden Dawn didn't happen until 1980, when I was around 24. So what happened after that? Pat was
Well,
just fully into the starting to do a lot of reading in that area, and was keen to get into it. And when he met me, he tested me out with reading normal playing cards. I hadn't studied them, didn't know anything about them really, and had just played a little bit with reading them because someone had sort of asked me to do that a few years beforehand. And so I basically did a reading for him, and it turned out to be quite accurate. And it just went from there as far as our journey with the Golden Dawn took place.
yeah, well, so he was studying the books, but he wasn't aware at that time of the group in New Zealand or the last
I'm
remaining
not sure
temple.
when he was aware of it,
Yeah.
but near the end of 1980, so we married in June of 1980, he asked me whether I knew of the temple in Havelock North. And so I basically said I didn't, but I had to think about it and thought, oh, I know of someone to ring and ask. Because I had worked in a firm where I was secretary to a person who I had registered that they had a Masonic ring on their finger.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe a Mason would know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Follow the
and he was quite
breadcrumbs.
yes, he was quite an elderly gentleman, and he was a very nice person. So I rang him and asked him, and he said, well, I wasn't involved with it, but I know who you can contact. And so he put us in touch with Jack White. And Jack White had a secret little bookshop up some stairs in Napier, which is the twin city to Hastings, only about 20 minutes away, 20, 30 minutes away. And so we went and visited the bookshop and had a talk to Jack. And at least I think his name was Jack. My memory of names is not terrific, but his last name was White. And he said that he couldn't help us, although later I found he was a member of Frater as well as the Order of the Table Round that Falcon brought over. And he couldn't help us, and so he put us on to Jack Taylor. So he rung Jack Taylor from the shop, and Jack Taylor said, yes, send them over. And that's where it started. Jack Taylor then introduced us to two other couples, Percy and Noni Wilkinson, and Babs and Ian Nairn. And they were all, I don't know about Noni, I think she was 5'6", but the rest of them were 6'5", and Jack was 7'4". And so it started with the odd visit to Hawke's Bay because I was living in Wellington with Pat at the time. And we would go and visit. They would set up a morning tea or an afternoon tea session. And there were times where they would all be in the room at the same time, or it would be just us visiting Jack, because Jack took over our main guidance or
Hmm.
mentoring.
Yeah.
We had already, because by that stage it was in 1981 when we were visiting him and met up with him, and we had already gone through a few of the outer order grades on our own, as a lot of people do. They pick up Regardie's book and away they go. And so Jack sort of took us under his wing and supported that and provided the odd extra paper. Interesting enough, they didn't have too many papers. It's as if when Whare was closed down, the chiefs at the time, without discussing it with the rest of the inner order members, started a bonfire and started burning everything. It was quite
Yeah.
shocking. I can remember the Nairns and the Wilkinsons exclaim how shocked and upset they were, because they would have continued the order if they'd been spoken to.
Wow. Yeah, I only know Nick Farrell's account of that in his lovely little Beyond the Sun book, where he talks about it's sort of a partial biography, of course, of Dr. Falcon, but also of the group
Yes.
at Frater in the New Zealand story, essentially. And so that's the only time I've heard this told. And so to hear it from you, who heard it from the people themselves, how they felt about I mean, there was probably Mathers and Yates and original members' papers and notes, or at least copies of them in that bonfire of,
Yes, unless the adepts had kept papers or been able to keep papers or had made handwritten copies, because that's how they worked. They would be given a paper,
yeah.
they would make a handwritten copy, then it would be returned to the temple. And that was a good way of learning. These days, people photocopy.
I actually have gone back to having my students hand copy out the diagrams and all the papers. And I think that's because I went to Waldorf school, and in Waldorf school we create our own textbook throughout the course. If you are familiar with the way that Waldorf anthroposophy and Steiner's school
Ah,
system
yes,
works. And so,
yes.
you make your own textbook, and that's sort of what the original Golden Dawn people did. And that's what I've gone back to doing is, making your own. Yeah, you're, copying them out. I think it's a very important process. I think it's much underestimated at the value of hand copying out all the diagrams and writing out the lessons and the transcriptions, especially when you have them in manuscript form. And a lot of the documents are still unpublished and just in manuscript form. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the method of making duplication at Whare was through a gestetner, the old gestetner that they used to use. And so the actual copies and prints were not very good. And Percy or Jack would send us a copy of a ritual, and we had to send it back to them after we'd made copies. Unfortunately, we had some pretty poor copies because Pat took them to his work and rushed them through the copier before anyone could see. So they were sort of not terrific copies. There
So
was a lady
this,
called.
no, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, there was a lady called Alison Latty. She was a 5'6", a lovely, dear old lady, but she was very, very ill and been very ill for most of her life, and was still living with her parents. And she had her own little area of their large sort of house that we would go and visit her as well. She was quite an artist in her own right. But Jack got her to write out quite a bit for us and do the drawings. She even made all the chief's nemesis and sent them to us. So we all had all these coloured striped nemesis of the different colours. Yeah. So
With tails, correct?
with amazing
With tails.
tales, with weight in them.
Oh, really?
And so
So
that was when we,
they weren't stuffed, but they were weighted.
yeah, there's some kind of weight in them. Um,
Hmm.
And yes, they had something stuffed into them, some lining, but they weren't round. They were flat, but they were
Yeah,
thick. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I see
yeah. I mean,
today sometimes they have the ones stuffed with like sort of foam or something that makes them round. Ours were flat but not thick. They were just fabric with ribbon, so they were sort of thick, but not like you're describing. It sounds like they really did have something
yeah.
to
Well, on a
keep it
tiny
weighted
person
down.
like me, it went right down my back,
Okay.
down towards the base chakra. But they weren't short tails, and they are better flat doing that. And
Yeah.
you're aware of the reason for them, aren't you?
I'm aware of, yeah, the reason you've told me. In the past,
Yeah.
I've heard people say that the original Golden Dawn didn't have tails on their nemesis, and I've never been able to find out. Well, hearing from you that there was a reason for the tails sort of
Well,
seems to be
only the
confirmation.
yeah, only the officers wore the nemesis with tails. The rest of the membership attending would wear like Egyptian cloths. They have the band across the head, and the cloth just comes down so far.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far the cloth. Actually didn't witness one of them, but I made a small number of them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, and we of course, it's very well known that of course the original members didn't necessarily wear robes even. They would wear gowns or whatever, perhaps whatever they had back in London in the 1880s and 90s. Have you heard anything about what their dress was like back then, or any rumors now?
No, I
Yeah.
am the worst historian in the world. I just the history side of things just goes through one ear and out the other with me. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
you
can
mentioned that.
talk from experience, but I
Yeah,
can't do what other people have done and written books on what who did what. It would take too much work for me to look it all up and
well,
research it.
and I loved it when you told me that about yourself because as much as I do love the theory and the history, yeah, it's the practice and the experience and the you know transformation that I get from taking
Mm.
this seriously and putting my whole heart and soul in and mind into everything I do. I just finished a major project, in fact, that I thought would be very easy to do and pretty quick. And it turned out to be much more challenging and humbling than I thought. And it involved a lot of work with Hermes and Asclepius and Thoth and some of these gods. And I thought I really would have I would sail through it like a breeze. And oh boy, was that a humbling experience. Sometimes the gods find a way to remind us of our current state in life and that we we should, yeah, yeah. So let's talk about experience. I mean, when it comes to teachers and training, did you have a favorite member of the Frater group that you liked the best, that you enjoyed learning from and talking to the most?
Well, Babs and Babs, as in Barbara, and Ian Nen used to be farmers from an area about by car. It was about an hour out of Napier, uh, which is their coastline city, and they would basically come and visit. By the time we met them, they were retired and living in Havelock North. Their association with us was mainly just hosting the afternoon teas and having a big laugh and telling lots of stories about the people that they encountered there through the um, order and the funny little anecdotes and things like that. So they didn't sort of take part of the actual training. And in essence, we kind of trained ourselves. We were just sort of subtly guided and the odd paper and things sent to us. And Jack Taylor was the one that did the most talking, lecturing, and in his lounge. Oh, and Percy Wilkinson, he did a bit of work with me when it came to astrology and discussions on Enochian chess because he was the only one out of all the ones we met that had made his own chess set, which I have with me at the moment. Uh, I didn't actually inherit it after he died. It was quite interesting. I'll get back to Jack shortly. It was quite interesting.
You dedicate
Percy
your
had
book
sort
to
of,
him, I believe.
yeah, Percy
Yeah.
had sort of said to me that he'll leave the chess set to me, but it wasn't written down. So when he passed away, his wife sort of passed things away out to people who were local that were interested in the GD, and so one person took away, which I found later, the board, because he only made the earth board, and he made it in 4 pieces. And so when you set it on the table, you slot them together, the 4 elemental corners. And another person ended up with the box with all the carved pieces, all the wooden pieces that Percy had painted. Because Frater actually had these wooden templates, which had all the pieces cut out and would slip, and they would fit into little wee stands, and the person would take them away and paint them and make their own boards. And it's a bit like the tarot deck that they had, that it was just a line drawn deck, and copies were made and they were handed out to people to take away to paint. So another chap, which is in the acknowledgements of my book, Mike Burden, he had the pieces. So the lady that had the boards, which we had no idea in all the years I knew her, and did goddess and priestess work with her, with the Lycian and Isian work, when she passed, or before she passed, she put on my doorstep one day a box of Golden Dawn stuff, booklets, papers, even something from Westcott that had been written, and Frank Salt, his diagrams and drawings of the god forms. And in there were these chessboards, at least these 4 pieces to make up the one board. And I told the Mike that I had received this, and he said, "Funny you say that, I have the pieces." And so we made an agreement that we both shared the deck, shared the, not deck, but shared the chess game, the board, the chess board, and it had turns at our homes. Chessboard and pieces.
Yeah,
We just
amazing.
put the 2 together, and they had turns at our homes. And there's times I would travel through his area where he lived in Taupo, and we would have 1 or 2 games over the 2 days that I was there. Yeah.
What was
And
do you
vice versa when he come through my area. Yeah.
do you recall what your early experiences of playing it were like? Was your, was the cerebral aspect of trying to figure it out, did that lead the way, or was there room in those early experiences for sensing what might be going on with the currents below the surface?
The whole lot.
The whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only played it once, and I was a little surprised by the shifts, shall we say. And of course, we didn't really have much training in playing it. Me and the adept who did it, but we did the calls, and I mean, I think all anyone's really had is your book. I mean, has there ever been even any other attempt by anyone to really understand it in a further way, in addition to, has anyone sort of used your work as a springboard to go further, as far as you're aware?
I think so. There's been
Yeah.
the odd person in communication with me that they have, done that. There's also someone else out there that you probably know that has written books on Enochian chess. He actually asked Pat for a copy of my rules, and Pat sent them off. But I don't know whether they were all used intact as I'd written them at the time, or what, because I sort of haven't got that person's material to have a look. But
Yeah, I believe they have some
some of
strange
them were
ideas of
used.
some things.
Yeah, some of
Um,
them were used, and others were changed. He did the recording technique that I came up with wasn't used, and normal chess recording was. But I honestly can't see how normal chess recording can record the game appropriately for you to fully know what was going on, especially in divination, because you really do need to be able to identify the angles, the elemental angles, and when pieces move from one angle to another. And so I find the recording technique that I've put together works excellent for that. And it's had to be adjusted, of course, for the last chapter of the revised edition that I've recently done, as we're dealing with 4 boards at once. And so I had to sort of work it with the new rules and things. And that was
Oh,
quite strange how that came about. I can get into
just
that later, though, if you like.
if anyone is watching this on YouTube, here's a little example of the boards and their colorings from the new edition. Yeah. Yeah, this book needed a new edition as well. I heard there was maybe a table that needs correction though, or something like that. Is for everyone else who's going to be getting this book as a result of our episode. Is there any notes that you want to give them for a heads up that they might not be aware of?
um, Give me more of an idea what you're looking for.
One of my just one. I don't actually know, but one friend said that one of the tables I should be aware needs a slight adjustment or something like that.
Oh,
And I thought I
right.
would ask you. I don't actually I haven't had a chance to follow up on it again because yeah,
Okay.
there's a
Yeah.
lot to
Yeah.
deal with
We
in
need to
here,
give them a
and
heads up.
yeah,
When
but
I
because I know people will be buying this book as a result of our podcast, and so it's a great chance for them to get a little bit of a. Again, the charts are for recording, as you said, are really lovely done, nice and clear, so people can actually copy from this book and note. Well, yeah, like you keep track of your movements when you're doing using it for divination. There's different ways to do Enochian chess, right? There's different methods of play for different purposes. Um,
Well, what happened was the book had sort of stayed. I'd completed the book 4 years before it got published. In fact, I had completed it 12 years before it got published.
wow, that's a long time to be sitting on
But
a
it
work
sat
like
for four
this.
years with one publisher.
Dear
In the
Lord.
end, I pulled it because I got fed up, and I wrote some more. I went through it again and wrote some more.
Yeah.
And then it sat for another 4 years with another publisher. This is the revised edition.
Oh wow.
And then I got fed up waiting again, and I wrote some more. And that's when the last chapter developed, because I kept getting asked by the odd person, when are you going to write a chapter or write something about how to use the 4 boards at once, like Star Trek chess and things like that. And so my
There's
response was
you.
always,
You
yeah,
with the 4 boards.
that was
Just so
at Mike's
someone,
place.
yeah, just so
Yeah,
people can have
that's
an
the chess
idea of
set.
what the
Yeah,
boards looks like. Yeah.
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 My response is that it was in the too hard basket for my brain. I'm not that intelligent, I said.
Do we need 4 boards going on all at
And
once?
oh look, it's a big enough game just with 4 corners filled with chess pieces, and playing it that way and choosing the elemental board you wish to play on for whatever effect you're looking for. But going into the 4 boards was a big deal. So I had to think about it and I couldn't work it out. So I went to bed one night and I had a talk to the angels. And I said, if this is to happen, help me out here. Because this is a little bit too big for me to deal with that idea of a chapter. Well, I woke up the next morning and I had the whole layout in my head. So I quickly jotted the key points so I didn't forget everything, and those keywords would have triggered the memory of what was given me, and got on with my day. And then when I could, I sat down and started writing it. And then I made a glass set actually. I bought 4 sets of glass boards with glass pieces, and created the 4-dimensional chess, and just painted the glass pieces. And I left the boards unpainted because I expected one day that I would print off the coloured boards that I've got in the book and stick them underneath the glass. So I had that there, but I've never got around to doing that to get the sizing right.
That's a
So
cool
I sort
idea.
of stuck coloured paper under the boards to identify the elemental boards. And I got little stands, and so I could have the boards on different levels.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like Star Trek,
Yeah.
just
Kind
with
of
more
like Star
angels
Trek. Yeah.
and Egyptian
And
gods.
practiced it for over a year to test out what the angels gave me. And in my supposed wisdom, certain things seemed like they needed to be changed in those rules and how to play, which I did and tested that, but nothing worked except what the angels gave me. So I had to basically go back to that and keep that as the rules that were written into this book. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Now,
so interesting. That
tables in this book, it's page 9, figure 4, Earth tablet. It's with the actual Enochian tablet, not the Enochian chessboard. And somehow, while it was away from me with someone else to help do things with it, the tablets didn't all get put in. That the ear tablet was put in twice. And so I have fixed that, and the book has been selling accurately. Did you get the
oh yeah.
version that was fixed?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's got
my
Imordial Hectaga
yeah. Yeah,
along the middle.
mine's absolutely correct. I guess that's why when I saw the
Yeah.
comment online from a friend and I checked
Yeah,
my
the
book
first
and I
few
was
books
like,
sold.
Mine looks fine." I was like, so that's why I asked you. I thought, "Oh, well maybe Christine can tell me where this issue is," because I didn't spend too
Yeah.
long analyzing what they were saying on Facebook, you know. I just
Honestly,
noticed like, okay, well, I'll check
yeah.
my book and I checked my book and it looks fine. And so yeah, that's exciting news. So it was just a slight error with with the Enochian tablets, which people might think is a very big deal, and in a book called Enochian Chess that the Enochian tablets be all perfect all the time. But interestingly, of course, we come to expect like any Enochian practitioner worth their salt will never look at an Enochian table without asking themselves first, is this is this correct? Right? We
Well, I'll
know that
take the blame.
there's so many variations for tablets, even within the Golden Dawn system, that you always need to be aware of what you're looking at and what you're,
Yeah.
you know, you don't go into these things generally just blindly taking things for granted. But with yeah, your book is got yeah, that correction's been made apparently quite quickly. So yeah, so a few people have special editions with the extra air in it. Um,
Honestly, after 12 years of waiting for this book to go out, because it ended up being delayed another 4 years, even after those first 2 lots.
oh
So it
wow,
ended up to be 12 years.
dear
Um,
Lord.
I I was so desperate to get this out, and I wanted to get it out before certain planetary transits hit, which I
Mm.
didn't actually in the end. Um, and I proofed it so many times and ended up fixing quite a few things where I found um, some diagrams had been put in twice and something missed out. So I've had to fix a few things. But that was the one table that I didn't think of reading the lettering all I did was look at the title at the bottom, Figure 4 Earth Tablet, and I'd go, oh, good, it's there. And I didn't look up
And see
because by then
this.
I was
Yeah.
going over and over and over, and I'd become blind because I'd just gone through the book so many times, and it was such an embarrassment. And then in the back, there was a page where I had, while I was fixing things, I must have screwed it up somehow. Excuse for my language.
No, it's fine.
And in the chapter on, let's find the page. Okay, now you're going to past page 312, where it says rules 21 to 27. These are the instructions for the 4-dimensional chess. And if you go over to page... look, I've got a copy where I've put the insert of the correction.
All right.
You go to page 317, and there's an erratum. And if anyone hasn't got that erratum, I did post it on my Facebook site for people to take. But if anyone hasn't got it, they can just message me, and I will send them the PDF page of the erratum. Now, if you look down on that page to rule 26, okay.
Yeah.
It
I see it.
runs 26.1, okay. Then 26.1.1, or it should have stayed at that. 26.1.2 was actually 26.2. Somehow, I must have just been in one of my brain fogged moments by the time I got to the end of the book, and I messed it up while I was proofreading
Well,
it, reading.
it seems like hardly a fatal flaw, hey?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
26.1.2 is actually 26.2. 26.1.3 is actually 26.3.
Yeah.
26.1.4 is actually 26.4. And you go over the page
Yeah.
and you'll see 26.2.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
And it runs on okay from there.
Yeah. 26.2. Yeah, that's not a big deal. Yeah, that wouldn't interfere with anyone learning or
Yeah.
playing or anything like
Yeah.
that. So
So,
that's good. That's good. Well, good. I'm glad that
correction.
it's
I think I did it the other way around. Sorry. Ah, yeah. 26 point. Sorry. I'm back to front here. Sorry, I'm a bit dyslexic. It's getting worse as I'm getting older as well.
I'm
Correction.
yeah.
It's the reverse to what I've just said. 26.2 is 26.1.1. 26.3 is 26.1.3, 26.4 is 26.1.4. Then you go over the page to page 318, and that's where 26.2 starts. Okay?
It's just enumeration
Yeah, it is just enumeration.
glitch. It's
There
yeah,
may be the odd
so
other thing I corrected as I was making these corrections, and it went into the latest version, but I did get onto it as quick as I could. But the problem was with the printers, they have to clear all orders prior to me putting that correction in before they make the correction for the next lot of orders. And so some books went out with these things. So basically, they just need to get hold of me through Messenger. You'll find that on my Facebook page.
yeah.
And I can make sure that they get copies of the erratums.
Yeah, well, it's a great book, and people should definitely go out and check out Enochian Chess of the Golden Dawn. The more people who buy this book, the more incentivized probably makers will be to make games for us to buy. I know a few people have made games for commercial purchase in the past. I've never managed to be lucky enough to get any of them. And I've seen beautifully handmade made sets by a variety of different artists. Yeah, so it's pretty it's a pretty special game slash divination system slash transformation magic. Um, what do you think is the best way for people who have never played? And I count myself in that class, given that I've only played once. What do you think? But this is for other people who will get the book and then uh, figure it out. What do you think's the best way in for a new for a newbie, but also for an experienced magician and adept to approach it? Because again, a lot of it, probably the majority of Golden Dawn adepts have not actually had much experience with Enochian chess. Certainly, even the other veterans I've met have been like, "Ah, that's the one thing I didn't really ever get to do." You know, like that's a common line you hear. But especially with your new edition out, um, the Earth tablet's even correct, and all of that. Like, hopefully, we're going to see a little mini revolution of Enochian chess playing. I hope it's certainly something I know I'd like to promote and encourage people to do. So, what's the best way in for a beginner?
The best way in is to follow the instruction in the book one of the book, where I talk about using an ordinary playing chess set and an ordinary black and white board, and just color code the heads of the chess set pieces so that you can identify their what angle they belong to. You would buy two chess sets, two cheap chess sets, basically. So you've got and you can, with one board, you can color code the angles by putting some colored strips down the outer edge on each angle. And the pieces out of two chess sets can make up a full Enochian chess set with a few spears left over.
Hmm.
Because you need the four kings and the four queens, you see.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is
And
divination
yeah,
is divination the best place to start with it, do you think? Or do you
no,
think that no? Okay.
no. So by playing with the ordinary chess sets and not worrying about Enochian boards with the flashing colors, you get a chance to learn how to play without the influence of the colors, and you're ending up tripping out and going into the going to the never never, or having yourself influence, especially if you've got imbalances in your makeup, which quite often shows through your horoscope, uh, as to the emphasis of elements within your nature. If you're too much water, for example, and you play too much on the water board, you can find a lot of problems with your emotional state.
Be careful
The
not
earth
to
board,
waterboard yourself.
yeah, for non-adepts and people that are not on a magical path, I do not recommend using the coloured boards. Just use ordinary playing board and just play the game and have fun. But for people going on a path, magical path, and learning more on that level, then start off with the earth board and don't go near the other elemental boards for quite some time until you've mastered all the angles of that earth board.
Hmm.
Because what happens is there's subtle changes that take place within your own psyche, within your own DNA makeup, maybe, let's say, um, that that basically work with you and start balancing you up and changing you. But if you just like to play only one element because you play it well, like I know one person years ago in Wellington that kept doing, and I had to make the person go and play other elements, and they really complained, especially the earth element. It creates an overemphasis of that element in their nature, and they can go quite crazy. And so it truly does have a magical effect on people. So if you're not have any training or haven't been working on your own psychological and inner development and meeting your own demons within inside and being totally truthful with yourself, I think that's very important. People go into this magical field and do not work on themselves and make the necessary evolving changes that they need to make to who they are. I mean, what are we on this path for? Really, are we trying to, shouldn't people be trying to work towards, if they're in the Hermetic side of things, becoming one with the divine and becoming more and more like the divine? Instead of basically, excuse for my language, being a shithead and causing people a lot of trouble. But we really need to wake up and utilize this path, not just for the idea of the sensation of having something exciting or powerful or developing powers, but it's that comes without question if you actually walk the right path. But if you don't, you're just playing games for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about the contrast of the seriousness of the mind and heart that we need for this work to actually have positive results in our lives versus the potential allurements of something as fancy and colorful and psychedelic as Enochian chess, right? Almost so much about the Golden Dawn system actually almost wants to draw us into um it could so easily invite people to depart from reality. And so you really have to have a certain paradigm and dedication, I guess, within your soul to not just to not treat it like a game and to take that game seriously enough that it actually does teach you about yourself. And the rigorous honesty and self-reflection is a huge part of that in the Golden Dawn. It seems, and certainly in my experience, aside from the fancy initiations and the beautiful speeches and regalia that we all love and the rituals, the inner work, is a serious thing. It's a serious thing, and the idea of keeping focused, I guess this is the goal of the adept in my understanding is to maintain that focus in harmony and balance with everything else, right? The I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase. Maybe you've heard the phrase. I don't know if it's a modern phrase, but some people have said the adept never quits Yesod, right? The adept never quitteth Yesod. But in some ways, I think the adept really also doesn't quit the sun, in the sense that I heard rumors that members of Fade Ra actually refused to go beyond 5, 6 because those were just mystical grades, and the last magical transformation happened in Tiferet, and with Enochian chess, when you go into these imbalanced states or bring on an imbalance of the elements, the goal should be to harmonize that in your core, in beauty and in harmony and in peace. As far as I can tell, do you have a different take on what the purpose of imbalancing ourselves with elemental adventures is and how we are meant to resolve that within the
Well,
sun?
it's interesting because the idea is to experience the elements and become a master of what those elements represent in our human life, e.g., our personalities, things that are our abilities, things that are happening in our life. Take, for example, myself. I don't have any earth in my horoscope. Everything's in fire, water, or air, reasonably balanced in those three. And so the average astrologer would turn around and say, well, you're imbalanced in earth, so you'd have difficulty with physical things and earthly things, getting whatever. I'm not finding the right words, sorry. Brain goes blank every now and then. But I actually found through the use of the air element, I would sit and analyze things out. And of course, that make me look as if I'm sort of very airy. I've got a grand shine in the air. So, but I'm also a water sign rising and a water sign sun.
Oh,
with an
interesting.
Ea moon.
I have a lot
So
of areas with a with water rising as well. I'm mostly air with water rising and just one earth.
yeah,
Yeah.
and some very strong planets in fire, badly aspected.
Oh no.
But where was I? Can you retrack me here?
Yeah, well, you're talking about the imbalancing of the
Yeah,
the 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 refinement of the soul of the personality
yeah,
through the elemental journeys and imbalances and
yeah.
how that ties together. Yeah, like the alchemical journey of the adept essentially, right?
So I found over my life that I had to just put my mind to something, and then I told my body what to do, and I could do something practical, like carpentry or something else, and do it actually really well. So I wondered, do I have an imbalance of earth? Or is it, as one author stated, that you've actually already mastered it in a past life? So it could go one way or the other, but
Hmm.
what you do in your life actually says one way or the other. And I always found that I actually played the earth element on the boards very well at a later stage. But initially, that was where I was weakest. And so, although I had thought that I had mastered the earth element, it showed up in my gameplay. And I played the air element, fire element, water element very well. And the earth element, I was handicapped. So I would handicap myself a lot with the other people I played so that they could get a good game with me. Otherwise, I was wiping them off the board all the time. There were times where I would have 2 to 3 people lined up with chessboards, and I'd go from board to board playing them. And I'm not saying I was a great chess player. It's just where I was at that time. Uh, nowadays, I'm hopeless because I haven't played games for quite some time because there haven't been people wanting to play chess with me or able to. Because yeah, it's just the way life's gone. But so I played that earth element over and over again to handicap myself, except where the person themselves needed to experience earth. And then I just take one of the other elements. Or if it was just 2 people, 3 people playing, for example, I'd take 2 sets of pieces and play against the other 2 that worked one set of pieces each, just to make it harder for myself. But usually it's sort of one-on-one, so that you'd be working with working your ally sets. Which is, I find it much more enjoyable because you know what you're doing. You can't read the mind of the other person where they're going to move their pieces. And so when you're playing 2 angles, you actually do a better job because you're working your angles together and playing the game as a
Hmm.
complete game. But when you've got someone else playing the opposite angle, it is a lot harder because they might just play for themselves and not cooperate with you so that you both as a team win the game. Yeah. But anyway, I did diverted again. So
No, it's
elements,
very interesting. It's
it's
very interesting.
very, very important to balance the elements as you work through the outer order grades because you're going to be needing to have that balance later when you do higher magical work, aren't you? And if you don't, you may find some experiences that you didn't expect. I can't say what because it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Or it may be one's personality. A lot of people drop out at Portal or 5-6. In
Hmm.
fact, and prior to that, a lot of people drop out when they're in Yesod. They go a little bit crazy with their egos in the air element.
Yeah. We would notice that sometimes often people would actually just sort of vanish in Theoricus for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, but they would often turn up like a long time later, maybe years later, for another class on their Wednesday night, and just like nothing had ever happened. Like they couldn't, they didn't think they were gone for that long at all. And we're just like, welcome back. Good to see you. Let's get you caught up on dues and yeah, good. That's it. We called them eternal theorici, and usually did eventually complete the grade of air, but yeah, they would become airheads, as we would say back at our Temple Tahuti here in
Mm,
Vancouver, which I closed that down in 2003. But it had a good run with and over 100 active members when we closed it down. It was a fun time and a really great experience, which I was lucky to get because most people don't have Golden Dawn temples just sitting there in their city looking for members. It's pretty much it was kismet. Sort of like with you
mm.
in Havelock North and Hawke's Bay. I mean, if you hadn't noticed that Masonic ring on that fellow, isn't there a good chance that you all would not have connected with Jack
That's
Taylor and all
right.
of them?
We wouldn't have
So
known who to contact.
So if your friend hadn't brought you to Pat's house that day, and if you hadn't been from that area, exact area of New Zealand,
Mm.
and hadn't happened to notice a Masonic ring on one fellow's hand, the entire history of the Golden Dawn tradition might be radically different today.
Oh, it would be. It wouldn't. It
That's
probably wouldn't have happened. Maybe.
that's
Maybe
so crazy.
Pat was very good at tracking things down, so maybe he would eventually track them down. I don't know. Um,
I'd like to think so.
but there is a lot that probably wouldn't have happened. When you said you wanted to do the podcast, I thought I better go back and look at my diaries, and I realised how much contribution personally I had put into it all. We actually worked really good as a team because we had our own specialities.
And
Mm.
Pat's is the theory and the history and compiling books and probably much more than that, but um your specialty is your specialty includes things like rocks, herbs, and gems, which is for me was one of the first things that drew me to the magical path. Was my love of gems as a kid, of course, but I could feel the difference easily. Like my friends would test me. It didn't matter which gem they put on under my hand with my eyes closed. I could tell them which one it was. So like I had a very
Mm.
provable connection to these things that I would demonstrate to my other friends because they'd be like, that's not possible. You can't feel an amethyst versus an onyx. It's like, let me show you. You can. They feel different. It's as different as anything else that you would experience in life. It just is not the same thing as this other thing. And herbs, crushing up the herbs in my early days of druidry, in the early 90s. That was so this is something that I was very excited to talk to you about. You did a book on it in the past, a little book, as you said, but something that you'd like to re-expand
Um,
and enlarge. There it is, Herbs and Magic and Alchemy. That is
mm. That was just a notebook for me. That book was just compiled because I was just compiling my thoughts, my ideas, and thought I need a quick reference for myself on certain things, so I don't have to keep hunting for answers for any further work I do with alchemy. Um, I kind of started the alchemy in I think late 1980, early 1991. Everything kind of started in sorry, correction. Again, the wrong words coming out. 1980 to 1981. Um, Around about the time, 1981 was a heck of a busy year. We made the chessboards and chess pieces. They took 9 months painting of the boards, drawing up and painting, and I did all that myself. The chess pieces, it took me 7 months to paint them all because it was on fiberglass and I had to put so many coats on for it to hold.
wow.
And during that time, I put together the first manuscript of Enochian Chess, which Pat also contributed some bits and pieces to. And we ended up hard binding itself with gold embossed lettering. Uh, and it's one of a kind,
Beautiful.
still sitting in
Beautiful.
my library.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then after that, I decided to research more, write more. And I put in about 10 years of gameplay with different people and on my own with a tiny chessboard that was one of those travel sets, little peg set. And I color coded all the pieces, and it was just a way of working out all the gameplays, this opening game, middle game, end game play. It was a lot easier than setting up the bigger board, and I could do it anywhere, carry it with me. And all the other divination side of it and everything just came together over those 9 to 10 years. It was sort of kind of, when you look after that first manuscript, I'd say 9 years to gather all my notes, 9 months to pull the notes together. And finally, that created this book here, which is the first edition.
Yeah.
And that got published 2 years after we submitted it to the publishers. So it was finished in 1992 and got published in 1994. So the 1980s were really, really busy. We put in a heck of a lot of work into things. And
you built and ran a whole temple in Wellington, if I'm not mistaken, right? It was a
yeah, they didn't really get going more until after 1983. We were sort of more solo then, because I was looking at my diary and it was sort of saying, oh, still nobody joining at this stage. I was sort of 1983 going towards 1985. And then people started to sort of filter in. So maybe we were meant to have that time alone to do all the work we did, because so much was written. I mean, the equinox and solstice ceremonies of the Golden Dawn we jointly wrote was done during that time. Initially with the tarot book, Pat wrote his own little small book where each card had about a paragraph written about it. And that was hardbound and was sort of like a quarto size book. And just under an inch, about 3/4 of an inch thick. And he actually sent it for publication, but it was rejected. And when it came back, by that stage, I was going more fully into the tarot, because I actually knew nothing about any of these things until I met him. And he'd say, go and learn this, because he wanted me to become an expert in certain areas so that he didn't have to do it, so he could just draw from my knowledge. So off I'd go, and I learned the tarot, I learned astrology. They were all big subjects, lifelong subjects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I became an astrologer. It just all in that sort of
telling
short
someone,
time.
Could you go learn quantum physics and get back to me in a few hours?
Basically, yeah. And at this stage, I was just a mystic in my own right. I wasn't an academic. I didn't think I had a brain to speak of much. But I discovered that, I did have some intelligence and put it all together. So he must have seen something in me I didn't see myself initially. So I went and learned that. He wanted me to go and do the alchemy. So they were all big, big subjects. And I put in quite a lot of time working on the color scales and
I want to talk about that a bit.
And wrote
the
chess books. I tell you, it just was such a busy time, the 1980s. But 1981 was sort of really the fuller launch of everything. And
81 was a busy year for me as well. I was being born. And
all right.
I'm a January 31st, 81 baby. Yeah, same day. Yeah. January 31st is the same day as Thomas Merton, so I'm in good company with Thomas Merton and Justin Timberlake. But yeah, 81 was a big year for the Golden Dawn, it seems, with you and Pat just really continuing on the tradition of what had just been shut down in Frater. And I mean, they must have been excited to think that especially after the tragedy of is it Dadelson? Did I say his name right? Dadelson?
Von Dadelson.
Yeah. He was kind of the guy behind the burning, right?
Yeah, because I don't remember names. Sorry,
And
like I
for
said, I'm
some
no
people,
good with the history,
it
but
is sort of traditional to burn these things. Some people must be
yeah.
sitting there or probably going to hear this and be like, how on earth could someone do something so evil as to burn these documents? Well, it's kind of was a tradition, right? It's not like he was completely, it's not shocking in the Golden Dawn to hear that someone burnt their tools and papers, right? We're not like, oh, how could they do that? It's like, that's kind of what they did a lot of the
Well,
time.
even a lot of the furniture and stuff and props and
Yeah.
implements, everything was thrown into the bonfire.
So
When
heartbreaking
when
to us.
the Neans and the Wilkinsons heard about it and they rushed over, they managed to save the pillars and the sphinxes that
Oh,
were built and made for the temple. And they went over to the Order of the Table Round to be looked after, and they're still
good.
there.
Yeah. Some
Yeah.
people have reached out from that neck of the woods, shall we say, to me over the years and chatted with me a bit because of my, sincere and undying interest and love in all of this and my own practice as this is my spirituality, for sure. And it's nice to hear that things didn't completely shut down in New Zealand in the same way that I think a lot of people assumed they did. Obviously, in addition to your continuing the Golden Dawn tradition with Pat in Wellington, um, and that journey of starting a temple and learning from the original crew of them, that must have been just the journey, adventure of a lifetime, right?
Well, it was. I think I was my most happiest doing all that because I'd found my niche,
Yeah.
found what I was here for, and it wasn't just us. It was the fact that we were guided. When I was looking through my diaries, I'd forgotten actually, and I was throughout the different dates over the course of those years. I saw that I had written that I was called, and that meant that whatever was guiding us was basically calling me to go in a state of not trance, because I never worked any mediumistic work where I was allowing myself to be taken over or anything entering into me. But I would connect and go very still in my consciousness, because I'd learnt in an early stage to actually have a sort of let's say, a Zen state of mind and not have lots of chatter. And I would go through days in a row with just a quiet state of mind and only focus on what I chose to focus on. And in that way, I was able to get a lot of insight into things. And it was also, it was very, very helpful when Pat kept sending me off to do practical work to come back and tell him my experience, because wouldn't you just, you've done it and had the experience. I'd have all this mystical insight that would come with it. So that happened quite a lot. So I would get information. I will give you an example. I was doing the dishes. You know about the art of Zen and doing the dishes, like art and Zen in the motorcycle maintenance.
I am
um,
I'm an initiate, I think.
and so I was just not thinking about anything, just doing the dishes. And I had this message come through: tell Pat not to change the aces. I thought, what on earth is going on here? I walk into the library, and there he is with the Enochian tablets in front of him, and he was making some changes with the aces. And I said, I've been told to tell you not to change the aces. So
Wow.
it's little things like that. We were being
Yeah.
guided and received information, and in his own way, I'm sure he was prodded and guided in that way too, although he didn't talk much about that connection.
Hmm.
It was just a natural thing for both of us. Yeah. And so, obviously it was meant to happen. wouldn't be
And
there and being given help like that to bring through the information, and you know what was coming through was not nonsense and wasn't anything trying to control you, because there was no attempt from those energies, those guides, to have an influence on us in our lives on any other level than just provide information. But I did reach a point of absolute exhaustion after a number of years, absolute total adrenal fatigue. And so I had to turn around and tell them to stop driving us, or driving me. And so they gave me a break where I received no information for a long time. But that was right at the end of the process. And that was around 1994. No, 19, yeah. They didn't stop completely, but yeah, it's sort of the pressure of to keep working at all this stuff, because we were holding down full-time jobs as well.
yeah, that's the thing people don't often realize about Golden Dawn groups is that yeah, it's usually people giving all their spare time to it. Well, you know, um,
Mm.
yeah, um, it's not
Yeah,
like
1994, 95. Yeah.
yeah, when
Mm.
yeah, I know when I moved into the temple here when I was in Portal. I got to move into the temple that was here and live in one of the bedrooms. And people always assume that that meant that I got like free rent or something. It's like, no, it's the other way around. The temple needed me to move in and give all my money to it to stay afloat because it was, you know, a big building that required rent. And yeah, we give our all to these things. We really do. And the higher you go up in the grades, the more you end up giving. Right. I would tell people
Mm.
that if you need that I've often tell people that the title's like very honored doesn't mean that they're the people who don't have to wash the bathroom. They're the people you call first if the bathroom needs washing because they will get it done. That's it's a mantle of responsibility, right? The buck stops with the adepts who are running the show, and that means a lot of work gets put on the shoulders. And to build a temple from scratch is absolutely incredible. I mean, it is really probably a very good thing to maintain a full-time job while doing it when you're running a temple with someone else because it keeps you more grounded so you don't just get completely lost in like living in your robes 24/7 and
Mm.
lost in the astral plane. It's probably good to have that. The people at Fadi Raw, they seem like very grounded, down to earth people when you read about them. There was, of course, a lot of people involved in government, in the clergy, in the church, but also just seems like I didn't realize quite how small a town it was until you mentioned it. But a lot of the town, it seemed, was also maybe even sometimes it seems like the majority of the town was part of the temple. Was it
It
that
was
many?
initially, because these were in the early years when it started. I mean, you're looking at early settlement in New Zealand. Well, not
Right.
early settlement, but just looking at still small areas. Um, but yeah, the tarot book, for example, when Pat did his initial little one, and it was rejected. When it came back, I sort of said to him, "Well, hey, I can add a fair bit to that." And so I worked mainly on all the cards, and they sort of grew from a paragraph to sometimes 2 or more pages per card. Uh, what was quite fascinating there, especially for the earth suit, while I was doing the work, I'd be sort of thinking about the card before I started writing, and then I'd walk to the big bay windows in our house. Now, our house was on a hillside, and it looked down to this great big magnolia tree which had these monstrous white flowers. And during the seasonal changes of that tree while I was writing, I would be watching the flowers. And it was interesting how the card I was writing about was alchemically connected to the actual stage of the flowers in this cycle the tree went through every year. And that kind of stimulated a fair bit on the alchemical side for the cards as well. So the book sort of grew from that little one to the size that it is now.
Yeah.
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 And I sort of put in the divination section and a few other little ditties. And during that time too, Pat contributed to additional work into the meanings of the cards, because I'd get so far and I'd say, Pat, go and research this. I need you to write something on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice versa. As I said, it was all teamwork. Where one was weak, the other one was strong.
So I wasn't aware that these are actually, are these your drawings of the cards?
No, he got another
No.
artist to do that.
Yeah,
He didn't want to wait for me
that's what I
to
thought.
do it because I was busy on other projects. And then with the second edition out, he got another artist to do that one. So I did not contribute to the drawings, which is interesting, seeing as I was the artist of the two of us. But I am
Yeah.
working on drawings now.
Are you going to maybe put out a deck or a major arcana set of cards or something like that, or another
I
book?
don't know yet. I'm just doing it for my own satisfaction,
Oh, wonderful.
and
That's the
creating a
best reason
temple,
to do it, isn't it?
creating a temple set,
Yeah.
which but I just wanted to, have a project. So here I
Yeah.
am.
That's a good one. And you have others
Yeah.
that are very exciting too, which I wish we could tell people about, but they're hush hush. Um, so maybe we could talk
Well, not totally hush hush. I
not
have
totally hush
mentioned it to a
hush.
few people. Uh, I have almost completed a book on Jack Taylor. I've already let Pat know that one, and he's quite
All right.
pleased about it.
All right.
Uh,
That's good. Okay.
I wanted people to know the man and how he thought and his approach to life. And so, because over the years he'd given passed quite a bit to me on things that he and I were interested in, which was color healing and tattvas and other things like that. And we sort of kindred spirits when it came to our ability in scrying and traveling in the spirit vision. So I had these papers on him. I had his own self biography. What are they called?
Autobiography.
Autobiography. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that was passed to me by his son,
Wow.
because his
Yeah.
son was part of this other group that I've been involved in for many years. He's now passed away, unfortunately. And he gave me permission to write about his father. And so I summarized and took out the important bits and not the very personal bits in connection, because he wrote this biography for his family.
Hmm.
So I took the necessary from it and wrote it in my own words and quoted some of Jack's statements, basically, in that biography. So it tells about how he came from, who he was in England, and how he came from England to New Zealand, his life experiences. So this is not just about magic, it's about the man.
Yeah.
And then I added his papers, his philosophies, his color healing, over 50 years of color healing research, and the advancement
Wow.
he went into it beyond what I've actually seen in books. And his and all sorts of other little papers and things he wrote of. Even there's a section on tattvas where he actually sent me a letter narrating a tattvic journey that he did with a lady. He guided a lady through and discussed tattvas with me. So, I still had his letters to me. on those more personal things that he and I discussed. So these things have been put into the book as well as other bits and pieces, and where
Amazing.
his information was missing or lacking because he'd write notes and sometimes just a page on something, I added to and created a fuller explanation for the public so they knew what the hell he was talking about. Yeah. So it's a bit of me in there, but mostly him.
That's very exciting. I love the biography, the biographical and historical aspect of all of this stuff. I'm just a fan of history, of course, and to see Falcon through, for example, through Nick Farrell's eyes, based on the contact he's had with people there and the history books, including like obviously when you're including things like bits of gossip or rumor about someone's life who has been gone for so long, it's hard to you don't know what's really real or true, but you can for someone like me, as you know, so detached in time from Falcon's life, you can get a bit more of an idea, and that's a really nice experience to have a fuller view of the person in their time and place rather than just see them through these mystical titles and some understanding of what their magical life would have been like. Yeah, when you get to see the human being, I think again that's where some of the greatest glimpses of the divine self come through is in the most human aspects of our lives, whether it's even our flaws, failings, or sinfulness, or just our basic human personalities and characters, as they say. I am a big fan of
Yes.
Goethe. Goethe believed that the greatest gift of the children of Earth is our personalities. And one thing I always liked about the Golden Dawn is it didn't seem to be. I grew up in an Eastern Maharishi tradition of yoga as a child, like no Christianity for me, just Eastern yoga. And one thing I liked about the Golden Dawn in the Western tradition when I encountered it was the sense that my personality wasn't something to be eschewed and despised and obliterated. That like it was okay to be a person, or as Josephine Paladin says, to be a character. A magician is a character in the truest sense, and this idea that in the Golden Dawn you purify your character rather than abandon it or try and override it or suppress it, I really enjoyed. That it lets us just be children of Earth in all of our full, colorful rainbow selves.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, we are only just human,
Yeah.
and that's no matter what we do, we're still in this flesh and blood, and we are just humans. So until such time as we can molecularly dissolve ourselves and float away,
Put on our tunic of
we're still going
fires.
to be a piece of flesh when we die, and only our spirit will go and soul will go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we talk about colors
yeah.
a bit?
Um,
You
yeah.
you're
Yeah.
in your tarot book, you give an updated rendition of what the colors are.
Which
And
page is that again?
so I'm on page, it's right there in the beginning on the new edition,
Yeah.
right there under the four color scales. This says this paper compiled by Sir LZTM 74 of the Thoth Hermes Temple, Wellington, New Zealand, 1991. Um,
Yes, Alape Zodido Tol Macals.
all right.
That's the I used Enochian there. I don't use that motto anymore.
An Enochian
Um,
motto. That is hardcore, as they say.
yeah, I have another
That's a
motto now.
hardcore motto.
Yeah, but I don't use
Um,
that motto anymore. Yeah, but
well,
that was all that color work that I did. Excuse me.
so we have the two the Golden Dawn color scales is an interesting thing because as you've pointed out, sometimes the name of a color didn't really correspond to the color that they used. And
Yeah,
it seems like what you've done is updated the colors that the nominal colors used in the Golden Dawn and Fade Ra with a more accurate description of what that color would actually look like. So, you know,
Mm.
pure soft blue could be a couple different things to my mind, pure soft blue, but you call it bluish white, which I think is a bit easier to create. Like if I have to create a bluish white, that's easier than what's pure about the soft blue and how deep is that blue. Whereas if it's just a
Yes.
white that's slightly bluish, I can create that very easily. I get my white paint, then I add a tiny bit of blue, and there we are. Whereas pure soft blue, that could be a deep blue, it could be a light deep blue, or a deep. So there's that issue with a bunch of the colors. I think that has always that it's one of the like for some people that the color charts alone is a reason that they must get your and Pat's book on the tarot. The other reason is it's the best book on the Golden Dawn Tarot, of course, which I notice some people who get it, they don't expect what kind of tarot book it is. It is really a tarot book for the Golden Dawn magician who understands the Golden Dawn tradition. Um, what was the
Well,
process for you?
Aleister Crowley
Go
in
for it, yeah.
777 did colour scales as well.
Yes.
What I did was I worked with the Crowley version, the Golden Dawn version, as I can't even remember where we got it all from, and guidance from Jack Taylor. And I put the
Okay.
three together, and I sat there with uh, watercolor paints, and I mixed the colors, generating them from Kether to Malkuth, from at the Absolutistic scale all the way through to the Asaya. So, from the king scale right through to the princess scale, from Kether to Malkuth, going from one to the other, because in doing that, you actually see how it's generated from one tree to the other, to the other, to the other. And I only way to have visualized it or seen it properly and understood the colors was to actually physically mix the paints and do it. And the biggest problem is, and you're going to find that all over the world for generations to come, is everyone's going to mix their paints different as far as how much of each color that you mix together. I remember one person writing to us insisted I tell him exactly the portion of mixes. And after hundreds of colors, am I going to remember that? I did write charts telling myself,
Oh wow.
but my descriptions, and I put little dashes of the colors that I used to get the final color. I actually still got all them.
Oh wow.
Um, but to try and describe it in words to someone
Yeah.
else. And then they wanted to know what type of paints I used. Well, I said ordinary Winsor watercolors, but they didn't seem to understand that brand. And I couldn't sort of give them a proper answer because I didn't know what brands they were working with.
Hmm.
And of course, it depends on what paint brand you use as far as the colors go, I suppose. Yeah. Well, those things might be a bit more accurate now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're more accurate. I know like I have lots of different kinds of yellow, and they all say they're yellow, but they they don't look the same, you know?
Oh,
So,
this is where Jack Taylor created a 64 color wheel of
okay.
64 colors. So imagine the zodiac around the wheel, and each zodiac sign had a main color, and then below that, three colors. And those three colors again could be divided. So you had variations, pigment variations of the colors all the way around the wheel. Problem was he never painted a wheel like that. He actually made glass slides. And inside the glass slides, he bought lots of different coloured cellophane, and he put layers of cellophane paper in between the glass sides to create his colours. And then those glass sides would go into a light fitting so he could shine the light for colour healing on people.
Wow.
But the chart, he did work, and he used the British floral. I'll have it written up right in my book. I've forgotten the wording again, but the British Society, Floral Society colour charts. Well, that's not available anymore. It might be in a museum now, but or with the
Right.
society as their old colour charts, but not anymore. So I basically took his colours as well as part of the development. Not to great extent, because at that stage he hadn't fully shared it all with me for the actual colours that are in the tarot book. But
Yeah.
later I did work on his colour scales and then matched them to the Methuen handbook colour scales, which is in publication, or was when I had it. I think it still
Okay.
is. And of course, that's got pages and pages of colours. And so each colour and all the variations of that colour from dark shade to light shade. And then in the back pages, you can match them, and it has the names of the colours or names that could describe that range of colour. And so it had a coding that went with it, and so I used that coding and created these charts. And of course, that's not published. I've still got these charts of the color coding, so anyone could look up the Methuen book and find that color to actually get a visual of what it looks like.
Yeah, it's fabulous work, and it's so exciting to hear that Jack Taylor and you connected on the color aspect so strongly. That makes sense because the colors are such a huge part of course, the tradition and the temple even, and the cards in the vault, and it all ties everything together. And it's very exciting to me to hear that Jack Taylor was actively working with color healing. Because again, that was one of my passions since I was very young, and still is a passion. Yeah, I'd love to. I'm always happy to hear more about that. I can imagine. I can sort of imagine some of the things he might have tried, but yeah, the shining light through the glass is a new one. That's definitely a new one. The did you and he ever talk about like the color selections when it came to the vault? And I know there's been debates about brightness and like whether brightness is more important than accurate flashing colors. Was that something that you guys talked much about?
Yes, he said the colours in the vault were too dark, that the people using the paints had not had been a bit too literal with them, and
Oh
things
wow.
had
So
mixed up a bit too dark. Uh, yeah, that's a fascinating thing. That would be a lot of fun, painting a vault, because I love
yeah, we
mixing colour and I love painting.
well, you
But
can come help us
yeah,
paint. We're painting too this year, and you can come help us if you want. We can just teleport you here to Vancouver. With the I'm sure the teleportation devices will be out any day now. They will be, right? The AI's figured out how to make them, and we'll just zoop beam you from New Zealand.
well,
And
I can travel in spirit and see what's going on in another place, but I can't,
well,
I doubt
I
whether I can
will
take my whole
I will
physical body
certainly
there.
send you pictures as we're painting. Like I said, we're painting two because why make one when you can make two? One that's one that's fixed and one that will be travelable. But I'll definitely send you pictures as we're going along, because that is an interesting topic. That is one of those really interesting decisions you have to make is like, are you going to go for what the flashing colors specifically would suggest, or are you going to brighten it a little bit perhaps, or see if it fits in, or are you going to maybe trust your intuition and tweak something slightly? And I've heard so many over the decades, I've heard from so many people who have made them. Of course, we all perk up usually when someone talks about making tools like that and temples like that,
Mm.
right? We're all very interested to hear what someone's done or tried and what their experience was. Nick's given some interesting comments about his experience with the way he made his in Rome, right? The way he printed it by because using a computer, you can of course select the technically precise color. Of course, even he then decided to tweak some of them, I believe, for the sake of brightness or to be more in tune with a received
Yeah, yeah.
intuition and teaching. So that really puts it into the realm of the artistry of the adept, I think, right? The it's like you're taking everything you've learned from the system and practiced and experienced with the subtle forces and trying to embody it in this seven-sided, beautiful creation of spirit.
You just need to have a good template of the zodiac colors and the colors of the planets. And then after that, everything else is just blending.
Right. Just blending one or two paints
Yeah.
or
And
three
it's
or
just a
four.
matter of getting your amounts right.
That's yeah.
And,
It's
if you can have had good paints and not have bought too darker, deeper colors. Yeah, if you have the good clear colors, it should come up quite good. But I think the issue with the Volta's later pictures is the Volt had faded a little bit.
yeah.
Things had aged,
And incense
and
coats
so what it
heavily.
would have looked like in the beginning could have been quite beautiful. Yeah,
It
incense
still looked
darkens things too. Yeah,
yeah, like all the smoke, right? That's
yeah,
soot from candles because
yeah. We
it's
have to keep washing our robes
yeah.
with the OTR. I mean, the Chivalric Hall Society is the public name. Uh, because even with things covering them while they're hanging in the changing room, because we don't take them home, they just stay there. But at least once a year we have to take them away and wash them because the incense still gets to them. Mm.
I have finally had to replace a white robe, my white robe from 20, from 2000. So that's 25 years. I finally had to. I fought it because it's so special, right? But it was turning yellow. It was turning yellow, which I thought
Mm.
was, not a bad thing for a white robe to do, to turn golden like the sun. But the reason why it was turning yellow is, of course, sweat and incense for two
Yeah,
decades. So
exactly.
I
Yeah.
finally did have to replace it, and it's not replaced with one as nice and heavy duty. So that's a shame. But I'll have to, uh, I'll have to work on that.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
regular washing and cleaning it up so that they last longer. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
would I
I
would
actually
dry
still
clean
have
mine
the
all the
robe
time.
I still have the robe I made for myself in the 1980s at Wellington.
Wow,
And it's still shining, and because I used sort of a more silky material, it was quite beautiful.
nice.
Yeah,
Do you have a
it was still
favorite?
looking good.
Did you
A
have a
favorite.
do you have a favorite um officer? This is something I always ask people who have done, and this is a Golden Dawn question I ask all Golden Dawn people. I asked Aaron Leach, and it's a fun one. Do you have a favorite officer role um that you've
No,
done or
not
not
really.
done? No,
I like them all. I
you like
put my heart and soul into whatever I do. But my favorite is to do solo work,
well,
to
that's
be on
kind of
my
what
own
it's
and do
all
my
about at the
solo
end of
work.
the day. Yeah, I mean,
Uh, but no, I don't have a favorite. I'm sort of humble enough and happy enough to do whatever role, but I don't have to worry about it that too much these days. The temple Pat and I had closed down when we left Wellington, and yeah, it didn't get reactivated.
hmm. Well, it's interesting how you guys came along at the almost immediately after things shut down in Havelock, and and then you guys, both you and the Ciceros, sort of started up new branches, while continuing the tradition at the
Yeah, it was
same
only
time that,
2 years later. Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
all got
strange.
burnt in 1979, I think, or 1978, somewhere around there. And we got going sort of halfway through 1980.
Yeah, and yeah, and thank God, because between the books that you and Pat did and the Ciceros, that's really, I think that's what created the modern milieu of Golden Dawn. And today it's in a renaissance with the the heyday of the internet, and with the average people learning how archives work and going there and taking photos of old manuscripts. And we always had access to some in the past. Some people would take photos and we'd share them around, but we didn't have the ability to just send photos around in the 90s, right? We didn't have these phones in our these computers, supercomputers in our hands, that we could send
Mm.
detailed PDFs and photos and zoom in. Like, that just wasn't a thing. So now someone over
No.
in the other side of the world gets a photo of a new Yeats manuscript, and all of a sudden we all have this amazing new insight into the tradition. And that's what's caused this little Golden Dawn Renaissance. I know some people are lamenting that maybe they think it's dwindling, but to me it seems the opposite. What I hear from most temples around the States is I hear of record high enrollments of people joining, and that's, I guess, a good thing for the tradition. It's certainly not everyone gets through the grades and decides to continue it on beyond that in their own life, but a few
As
do.
long as that, as long as people follow a good inner truth with it. There's a lot of people like to exploit things, as you know yourself. You've probably seen it out there. I shut down from being in contact with the outside occult world. Never really was in contact. Pat was the one that was in contact. But when he and I split up in 1999, I just got on with my life and didn't make contact. I didn't go online and go into chat groups. I didn't even join Facebook until 2017, and I was forced to do that because I was doing professional readings at a fair that was happening, and they said, "Well, you're not going to find out when the next one's running if you don't go on Messenger. We'll post it there."
Well, I'm
so
glad.
so it was only not until then that people started to find me and start chatting to me. Yeah, I've kept pretty well to myself and followed my own hermetic path and focused on my own personal cultivation alongside just simply trying to survive while rearing a child on my own.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you've also, of course, lended your wisdom and guidance to other to current contemporary groups, temples. I just live here in Vancouver, and on Vancouver Island, an old friend of mine, Frater Yeshi, lives, and he runs, of course, the Thuban Temple in Victoria, BC. And I know you've had some sort of nominal or some sort of role in guiding the development of the group there, and their efforts around the world. They've got
Oh,
groups
I
in
think,
Ireland who have said hello to me, and different places
yeah.
popping up. I hear about groups all the time that you wouldn't expect to be. I know I heard from someone in New Zealand about a group in Ireland. I'm being vague enough, I think, that I can say this
Mm,
stuff, but people give me, and then I'm like, oh wow, there's even every time I think I know how much Golden Dawn there is going on in the world, I hear about some other group doing some cool thing, like focused on a different aspect of the tradition. Again, I'm trying to be vague for privacy's sake.
mm.
As much as I'd love to spill all the beans, but like, yeah, it's great to hear these pockets rising up. And what has it been like working with Darcy Kuntz and Frater Yeshi, who one of whom is a dear friend, and the other Darcy I've never talked to.
I don't think I've had much of an influence on anyone. As I said, when I went online, I started to develop some friendships with people I talked with. Um, so if in any way I've been of help, that's great because, a lot of these people have been doing this for a very, very long time and they've already fully developed their situations, no matter who they are, on their own, through their own ingenuity. So,
Yeah.
I sort of kind of support that and have freely guided lots of different people since even before 2017 because, I had had my own thing going, but here in New Zealand. And I think 2010, Nick Farrell made a trip back to New Zealand, and we reconnected because I only sort of met him, I think, once or twice in Wellington, and had forgotten about him because Pat did all the talking and I just made the cups of teas, as you do, being the little woman. And Pat did a lot of talking, so I would zone out and then go away because you get to the point that you just don't even comprehend what's being said when people talk a lot. So Nick made contact, and then we've been in communication ever since, and good friends. So, yeah, he's been of help to me. I've been a help to him. I've enjoyed my communications with these other people that you mentioned. And it's all been good because around 2017, I had reached, just before that, I had reached a slump, as we do at times, and thinking, well, what's left? What is there for me in this world, Because I'd sort of gone through a lot of trials and ordeals over those 20 odd years or more on my own, and experienced a lot of nasty situations where people have been quite malicious. So I sort of got to the point and thought, okay, this is life. What am I doing? Because at that stage, I hadn't been doing any magical work unless I had to, like if I was under psychic attack, or you never stop. But I wasn't deliberately going out doing study, doing research. That I was just, most of my effort was put in writing courses for a naturopathic college during 2000. After Pat went, and I sort of got invited to teach there. And so I was writing courses for about 15 years, and that's all my time and energy went into, was natural medicine and iridology and herbs and bark flowers and things like that. And when that finished, and when they sold the college, I sat and wrote a more advanced correspondence course on iridology. But I've never really just put it out there and advertised or anything like that. There was just a few people that wanted it, so I wrote it, and so that they could do it and learn from it. But then half of them didn't carry their way all the way through it, so I've still got it on my computer. I haven't done anything with it. Mainly because it was based on German Jensen iridology, and a lot of his work was in it. And I'd also used, because I'd had permission to use for teaching purposes, photos of irises that I'd taken over the years, 15 years of teaching students. So I had lots of examples I could use in teaching this course. It was part correspondence, part workshop attendance. And so I feel that I can't publish that because there's copyright issues. And so I put my effort into that. But when all that was finished, and I finally left a job where it had changed managers, and the new manager saw me as a competition. And so she just basically did everything she could to drive me out. In the end, I just spat the dummy and went into mediation with a legal person about the mistreatment, and got out of the job, and without any problems in the end, and decided, well, I'll retire. I'll focus on my natural medicine and my clinic. Yeah, and so by 2017, I don't know, I just went into a bit of a slump thinking, well, I'm bored. What do I do? What do I really want to do? And prior to that, for a few years, I was asking myself, what do you really want to do in your life? I'm obviously a person that needs a mission, a purpose. And I was still managing and carrying on because I had, done my own inner cultivation. And so when you're close with the spirit within and spirit without, you don't actually go into depression. You don't actually get to the point where you think, oh, well, life is hopeless and things like that, because you're connected. But I finally came to the decision, oh, damn it. I was my most happiest when I was doing my Golden Dawn work. I should go back to what I did, take myself through all the information on the grade so I refresh myself, that I fill in the gaps that are missing, that I didn't learn, and then carry on with the higher work that I didn't complete. And so that was the path I decided to do. And so I'm still sort of in my own solo way doing that.
Yeah,
If I am
there's
affiliated with anything else, I won't be talking about it
of course, of
because
course.
you're under oath if you are.
Yeah.
But I've all these years since coming back to see in 1981 also, Pat and I were initiated into the Order of the Table Round, which was the Arthurian order that Phil had also brought over. And when we came back to live in Hawke's Bay in 1995, at least I came back to live in Hawke's Bay. That was the first time for Pat. We moved from Wellington, and he started back up with the OTR because we didn't really attend while we were living at a distance. We were just members. And I stayed home to look after our child because she was born in 1994. And that's when things closed down a bit for me as far as magical work, because I was focusing on a child. And if I tried to do something magical, she was so sensitive it would upset her.
Oh, wow.
So until she grew up, I had to sort of just hold back
Hmm.
or do things when she wasn't around.
Hmm.
um, yeah, the energetics were a bit too strong for her to handle. So Pat went back to there and was there for until about 4 years, and then we parted, and he went to Australia. One of the knights of the round table, one of the ladies, she offered to look after my child, babysit while I went to the main meetings. And so that facilitated me to get back into that order. And of course, I've been with it ever since. And it's just a light working order. It's not a magical order, but it's beautiful work. And it's very magical in its own right.
Well,
So
it's
the
it's
ritual
it's
side was satisfied in me, basically, on that level.
yeah, you can't really do anything Arthurian and not have it be a little magical. I mean, it's
Mm.
the nature of the Arthurian mythology
Well, you
entirely
connect
that
connect up
it's
very much to it and your own ancient ancestral roots as well. It's quite interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's something that's fascinated me my whole life as a diaspora Celtic kid, right? One side, my mom's side's from Scotland, my dad's side's from Ireland. We've only been in Canada a couple generations, so the family's very immediately from those places and very much behaves the way those people from those places behave, just without the accents. Like my dad's Irish family, they would seem insane until you imagine them with Irish accents, and then it makes perfect sense the way they talk to each other and behave. It just like, you know what I
Mm.
mean? So, but growing up, especially in Canada, without any of that heritage and landscape and culture, because it's just not here. It didn't come with us. It just doesn't. The mythologies like the Arthurian myths and sagas and the other Celtic mythologies that exist were fundamental. Like they were in a sense, other than, for example, the Gaelic language and the music, they're the only touch point for someone to have connect with their heritage growing up in Canada. right? And New Zealand is kind of similar in that way for a lot of you because you have these memories of ancestral lands where your people are from, in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and different places like that, right? But we are displaced and we are disconnected from our native mythologies the same way as if you were to abduct a bunch of First Nations people from Canada and take them over to Ireland and be like, here you go. They wouldn't have the mountains where there's with the two bumps that are the two sisters, and so the mythology is so important, and it really becomes in some ways. My point is like it is your culture. The myth becomes your entire culture in a way, if you want one. If you want a culture, if you're hungry for that homeland sense of origin, and so yeah, other than Arthur and a few other Celtic mythologies, we don't have much. So it's a very big deal, and I
Yeah.
can I can imagine
Oh,
what it
it's
would have
great.
been
And
like to be part of that
yeah,
group in those days.
and you're
Yeah.
part of a family. And out of that, I met some very interesting people. And there were some ladies who were doing the Lycian and Isian or Isis work.
Yeah.
And being female, that sort of draws you into the goddess work. And so, uh, I didn't actually join them um, or go through an initiation with them until way after I'd spent many years just going along to ceremonies that they invited me to. And with one lady with her group, she just needed an extra person as an officer, and because I could walk into any ritual, pick up something I haven't ever seen before, and just do it, and do it well. I would just be thrown into an officer position and help her out. But it was just quite rewarding and enjoyed my work there. But there wasn't sort of the need to actually join their groups to the full extent and become initiated or work my way through them because I was sort of already there in my own right. But I did eventually let one of them put me through uh, into her one, but she died not long after. But as I said, I had been attending her seasonal ceremonies for years.
Were they connected with the Fellowship of Isis or independent?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
was
They
working
had
actually.
certificates and everything showing that they were
Yeah.
ordained to be priestesses, or high priestesses of those things, and it was all very interesting. And you throw yourself sort of energetically full-hearted into it, and it was just nice over those years while not doing the GD work, just to have something extra, something special. In other words, step into the fairy world occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just here and there, but yeah, it's good to stay connected. I was working at a Fellowship of Isis church up until COVID happened in California. And it was
Mm.
connected with the Fellowship of Isis, but founded as its own Isium, uh, by a
Yes, they do.
by one of the Boda people. Arissa Victor. You probably never met Arissa Victor, but she was a protege of Jason Lauderhand, who was the protege of Paul Case, who founded Boda, of course. So yeah, there's this interesting connection, a fusion there between the Boda tradition and the Fellowship of Isis out of Ireland. And that was in a good experience. I got to be part of the Eleusinian mysteries that were being done there. And like you said, it was a different way of working. They don't work like we Golden Dawn people work. Um, and
Yes.
yeah, it's a different approach. And but again, you throw yourself into it, and it was a very nice, like you said. I think I know what you mean by having a different way into the fairy realms that you can step into a bit, even when you're not going, you know, full time at the Golden Dawn work or the regular
Mm.
magic that we're used to. It's just
Yeah.
nice to
So I,
have.
I didn't come back to the GD work much at all, apart from the odd stint where I was supportive or helpful or guided
Hmm.
someone else. But my own work didn't really restart until about 2017. But by then, I I actually didn't know how much I had learned and how much I knew until I got back into it. And then I sort of had a bit of an awakening about, oh my God, how did I know that? I see. I've been running a study group for a while, teaching people Kabbalah and Tarot and things like that. And a lot of things get asked, and I just automatically have the answers. And then afterwards, I think, how did I know that? I don't remember learning that. But so I must have taken in a heck of a lot in those years between 1980 and 1999 to when Pat and I sort of parted, and I sort of just focused on rearing my child and stuff and doing these other interesting things. I must have just taken in so much. And as soon as a question happens, and the answers just get triggered from the depths of my memory, and away I go. But I'm not necessarily an academic. I tend to, I can't go quoting this and that and the other thing. That's why you have a good reference library. Always have a good reference library, and you can look things up. Uh,
Absolutely.
I'm I'm more of a practitioner and a how-to person. So if someone asks me something, I'm not going to go rattling on about the academic information on it. I will actually give them the deeper mystical and spiritual meanings behind it and why you do it and what you should be experiencing or what you could experience from it. I sort of more of a how-to person. That's why the chess book was good, because it's basically this is how the chess set's made. This is how you play the game, and then amongst it all, the insights and experiences. And so you won't find any academic masterpiece in my future books. It's just more down to earth stuff.
Well, I do think that is what we actually need. We have a lot of the theory. We have lots of theory in the Golden Dawn, but we don't actually have too many. I think it's because so many of the original members either burned or buried or hid their diaries, right? I mean, we don't actually have many diaries. Given how many members have been in the Golden Dawn, comparably, we don't have many of their diaries and
No,
experiences like at all.
their
When you think
families must
about,
destroy them.
yeah, right, probably like, oh dear Lord, what is he writing about? Oh, just yeah. Like
Yeah.
I can imagine some of the families finding some of the old members' tools or things like that and being like, yeah.
Well, I
Anyway,
was looking at my diaries thinking I really should write my memoirs so this doesn't get lost, because I
please
discovered
do.
that I was writing down moments of deep insight into things. And I'm thinking, how did I know that? Oh, dear. And where did I get that from? Yeah. It's
Well, I do
just
think
lots of little things there, but other times I'm thinking, oh, this is stupid. I really don't want that seen publicly.
we all have those diary entries. Yep. 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 I was going through a diary from like Neophyte or Zelator and came across like a tarot reading on whether or not I should ask a girl out. And I was just, oh, it was so cringy. It was so cringy, but it was also sort of sweet, like to see how naive I was at that age. But it was well meant. But we don't have many diary. I really hope you write your memoir. Your book on Jack Taylor is going to be a beautiful gift and an insight into this fellow who became such a significant person in the history of the Golden Dawn. Really, Jack became very prominent in our history because of the role he played in your lives
I
and
think he'll be
as
quite
a
chuffed too.
good
He's that sort of person, but he's a man who was
good
very genuine,
that's
and he had
nice.
great insight and psychic ability, and he was also quite a comedian. He seemed to see the fun and jokes and all sorts of subtle things, and that's shown in all his stories. He wrote loads and loads of stories, and I'd love to publish his stories, but I only put a few couple in the book,
Okay.
uh, or two or three of them in the book, um, because those stories belong to his family, and I didn't want to overstep the line
Mm, yeah.
on that. his niece, one of his great nieces, said she wanted to publish them one day. So I just have left it, even though I've got quite a big bundle of them.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So, I mean, yeah, hopefully you do your memoirs as well. In my experience, that we have a lot of theory in the Golden Dawn and not much accounts of people's experiences. We have some, just not very much. We have very little. Like you could read it, I mean, you could probably count them on one hand how many diaries or personal experience books there are.
I think it's
Yeah,
looking at people's journeys.
yeah. So it's not
Yeah,
that we
and
want people's
there's
diary pages verbatim
books that provide
necessarily.
that. Yeah, books that provide that are actually very enlightening, even
Yeah.
though they don't necessarily give any specific teachings. It's just reading their journeys can actually open up quite a lot for a person, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's what I've
So
always found.
the journey of my alchemy, for example, that's a big story in itself. That notebook shouldn't have been published, but Francis Regardie and when was it? When did he come along? Let's just have a look. I wrote it down because I don't remember dates.
Yeah,
Uh,
you had tea with him a couple times, didn't you?
yeah. Regardie visited us in August 1983 and was Pat Beeman. I think I don't know that.
Yeah, with
B.
Chris.
Yeah. Oh, she changed her name to Chris Monastra.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Which was quite funny because there's a naturopath who was a friend of mine who quite a few years was called Chris Monastra as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
funny
Anyway,
coincidence.
they came along because they were sort of doing a bit of a tour of New Zealand. And actually got a picture of him sitting at the our Enochian Chess set.
Oh, really? Of Regardie?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And Pat threw my notebook on herbs and magic and alchemy because I wasn't going to publish it as it was. It was just the beginnings of what I was heading towards. And Regardie says, "Oh no, people don't want something complicated. They want a simple how-to. I'm going to take this and get it published for you." That was the last day we saw him, and he grabbed the manuscript and said, "No, let me take this overseas." And off he went, and he tried one publisher, and it sat, and didn't get published, and then tried another because this was written in 1983, but it didn't get published until, let's just have a look, 1990 was it? Yeah. Yeah, and it finally went to, after it didn't, nothing happened with the publisher he gave it to. He tried Prism Press, and they took it and published it. But by then, I kept saying, "Oh, look, forget it. I could write so much more now because I've completed the liquid stone, and I could write my whole journey with that and all the mystical experiences I had during the process and the magical operations I did, and etc. Because went through the whole Z2 formula, but not just that. I added my mystical work and dream work and meditations with it, and it was quite a story. I, in fact, recorded all of that in shorthand so that Pat didn't read it and use it as his own information because he kept doing that, taking my stuff and writing it as if it was his. No, I suppose that's a bit much. He's a talent in himself as far as that goes. Anyway, by that stage, I was just recording it in the shorthand. It was also quicker because when you receive information or you're trying to remember everything, you need to get it down as quick as possible, and shorthand was the quickest way. And I had learnt shorthand in secretarial college years ago.
It's a powerful skill. It's a shame they don't. Honestly, I don't know why they don't teach it to every school kid. It seems like it would be infinitely useful throughout our lives. To, yeah,
Yeah,
I think they're not teaching
yeah.
a lot of the stuff they should be teaching in school, but that's another conversation for another time. Yeah, what a cool tool to have in your tool belt to be able to just especially for scrying and doing magical work. Like that's one of the greatest challenges with solo work I find is recording. Like, I can if I focus entirely on the dialogue with the mystical dialogue with a spirit or God or higher consciousness or whatever, then the dialogue is better. Now, if I'm trying to write some of that dialogue down at the same time, that's where the challenge goes up a little bit. Sometimes you can just rely on automatic writing and it comes through smooth, but sometimes not. And it would be better to focus on it, right? And that's where I think, yeah, shorthand could be very useful because it's hard to, even if I maintain, like, one of the big differences I've found is if I'm doing work, say Enochian work, we're talking about that already. So if I'm doing Enochian work without many tools, which is fine, um, I still have, but I don't have, it's hard for me to maintain a very long dialogue. Whereas if I'm in a space, sacred space, have the full table set up, everything's there. Very easy to maintain the dialogue with that spirit usually, for hours and get lots of written, recorded dialogue down and get lots of Q&A sort of information. And sometimes you get amazing stuff. But again, just the trouble of writing it all down, and that's where having a scryer comes in, or another person who's, one person's writing, one person's asking the questions. But that's the challenge. So that's a great gift for you to have for your, you can work solo with a spirit and then just quickly shorthand the notes. I mean, yeah, maybe this is something every magician should consider learning. Is shorthand that hard to learn? It doesn't seem like it's
No,
too easy.
no, it's not.
It's
Um, I was just writing shorthand the other day because I had to write something down quickly, and because I thought I'd forgotten most of it, and I'm going to have to reteach myself to read my own notes, which I probably will with a lot of the bigger words and things like that. It's going to take a bit to transcribe it, and I should have transcribed it years ago. Um, but I was looking at my diaries, and I had written some things in shorthand. And that happened after I realised Pat had a sneak look at my diary once and come out and said, "You're writing this diary about me. Practically every entry says Pat did this and Pat did that." And so I thought, shit, he's reading my diary. So I put a lot in shorthand.
I mean, it's not that weird that your husband would be like a major character in your diary. It's like,
And I didn't write about my personal feelings or thoughts or all the crap that people write. It was more a analog of what we did magically, or what
yeah,
I did magically, and what I discovered, and the information given when I was called to listen
yeah,
by the guides,
yeah,
or if I did an astral journey or a scrying session. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So shorthand is not unachievable. It's a learnable skill. It's maybe not as
very
hard as
learnable.
not
Yeah,
as intimidated. We shouldn't be as intimidated perhaps as we otherwise might think we should be.
no,
So that's
no,
that's that's
it's
encouraging.
not.
That's a
It's not used much these days. And when I went into the workforce, all they wanted me to do was to listen to a dictaphone machine and type from there.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, what about my shorthand? It'll get rusty. It
Mm,
didn't. It did, but it still worked. Yeah. Um, and the job that I had with that gentleman who was a mason, they dictated because I was working for about 3 different people there on that floor, and they would dictate their letters, and so that was great. I could use my shorthand then, and I used to go to their conferences and take down in shorthand the presentations people gave, even though they were taping them, so that they had it both ways. And then I would have the tapes plus my shorthand to transcribe the whole lot later. Anyway, that's another story.
yeah. No, it's a fun detour actually because that's pretty yeah, it's a the things that you end up it's sometimes surprising the things that you realize would help your development most as a magician are often very practical down to earth skills,
Oh,
of course,
absolutely.
like
The ability to spell, to write, to do good English in one way or another actually came from being a secretary and writing what other people dictated. and it just filtered in, and then before you know it, you're able to do it
Hmm.
well. You know? I mean, I would come across words they used, and I'd have a dictionary there, and I'd actually look them up and thinking, yeah, that's an interesting word, and look up the meaning. Because I didn't do too good at school because of my hearing. I didn't. I had trouble hearing in a classroom with other noise echoing around me.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I I found classrooms very distracting as well. I would take days home from school that we would call learning days. I would take learning days home from school where I would stay home and actually learn at a comfortable, faster rate than I could in by going to spending my day with all these crazy kids running around, being distracting, which is that's sort of how I saw school as a preteen. Yeah, and I would stay home to read and learn quickly at a without all the crazy kids and teachers battling it out in the for attention. So yeah, I definitely understand that desire to just be a hermit and focus on your learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it all contributes, and I think the world of it's not just Golden Dawn, just the world of what we're in, and our interest, our research, our studies, our practices with this esoteric world is just so rewarding. It doesn't need to be a bad experience if people do it right and they don't do stupid things and step where they shouldn't step until they have developed certain skills to be able to cope with it, manage it. And what's most important, you need a level head. You talked about physical, practical work and exercises and things like that. I mean, that's so important. Uh, I did women's bodybuilding during all those years. It kept me beautifully grounded and strong to handle the amazing energy and forces that would come through you when you did the solo work, so it didn't crush you onto the ground, because it just felt like you were holding weight, as it was pouring in and pouring through. So training all those years not only helped me as a person and health, but it did really, it kept me grounded, stable. I never had a problem where my mind or personality or psyche got out of control. It just You just apply common sense in all this work.
Yeah, one thing I wonder sometimes is well in the modern milieu of the Golden Dawn, it's very common to see people who are into also martial arts or some form of physical health or combat training or athleticism, right? I wonder how common that
Mm.
was though in the Victorian period because I don't think it was quite as common. We know Mathers was a boxer, which is really interesting, of course, and he has had this sort of public bravado apparently, and was more softer and genial in small groups privately, but was had a bravado in public persona apparently. Again, this is
Mm.
just what I've read. Didn't
Yeah,
know
and
him.
Falcon travelled to Africa, and he
The
must have
real
done a lot
life
of walking and
Quartermain.
journeying. Yeah, and Crowley climbed mountains. I mean, uh, Pat did martial arts training, and he worked out
Yeah.
in the weights. I worked out in the weights, and I did martial arts as well. It's just part of training the mind and body. If you just work on the mind, it creates a bit of an imbalance. Okay, so what do we do when we get older? Well, we just got to keep active. Just don't
Yeah.
sit for hours on end. Keep
Yeah.
active.
Try and yeah, keep getting up. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's actually one of the things that came into my life at a turning point, shall we say. Um, I was undiagnosed celiac disease up until I was 31. So like felt like I was in pain and felt like I was dying my whole life until my early 30s when I stopped eating grains and dairy and all of a sudden felt like better than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Like I'm healthier now than I've ever been my whole life because I, was consuming stuff that I couldn't digest that was killing me.
You look
And
well.
thank you. Thank you. I feel great. I feel great. I mean, I put on a ton of weight during lockdowns and COVID, but that's what the kettlebells and exercise are for. Um, yeah, it's just yeah, your body, right? Your compliment distracted me. Oh,
Sorry, sorry.
no,
It's
it's all right. I love it. I love it. But yeah, the change in just what was my point? I had a point. There was a point to the health and body alignment, physical. Anyway, your
yeah.
compliment distracted me. Thank you for the kind compliment.
Your
I feel
celiac
great too. Yeah,
used
yeah.
to.
Well, up until that, I guess, until I wasn't because of the undiagnosed disease, I wasn't in right relationship to my body. So I was always top heavy on spirit, I think, right? Like when your body doesn't work right, of course you want to retreat from it into something else, into the mind, into spirit, into anything else that will distract you from, the trauma of every meal. Like when you have that disease, like you eat a meal and you just it was shocking to find out. When I remember the first time I found out that people don't experience like sharp pains in their stomach every time they eat. I was like, I thought that's why no one can move after they eat. Isn't that normal? It seemed odd to me. And to
Mm.
realize like no, that this was not normal. Um, and then to finally actually clear out my body and recover physically from that. Um, yeah, yeah, to have alignment between then the mind and the body and the spirit and have them actually work in harmony. Um, it made the whole it made the magic aspect of magic more incarnational because before that, like, this magic and spirituality were a way to ease the suffering of having the body I had, right? Whereas once then I understood the body and understood how to not hurt it through eating things it couldn't eat, like grains and dairy, then all of a sudden the spirit was able to actually reside more in the body, and the body was able to amplify and enjoy the spirit. And those two things then became in balance. And yeah, yeah, exercise, health. It's all so important to the magical
Mm.
constitution, but it isn't when you don't understand it. It's funny how that journey is that there's yeah, it was kind of a hellish ride, to be honest. And both me and my sister went on that journey together, and got through it more or less. Not
Yes.
unscathed, but at least
No,
one
at
of
least
us is still
things are
alive.
sent to challenge us, eh? And somehow, some way, through these experiences, changes take place, and you manage to not only bring yourself out of that and know now how to manage it.
Yeah.
Um, there must have been something that helped you towards your own spiritual journey as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've understood it yet. Like it's something I'm still working on, understanding that
Mm.
and what that all was about. I did lose my little sister just on April 6th last year, so a year ago, 2 days ago. She died
Mm.
base jumping off a cliff in Italy. Um, and her parachute got caught on the rocks, and so she went through the Golden Dawn with me. She was my definitely my the most important person in my world, and she really helped me understand my celiac journey because she got off the gluten and the wheat as a teenager, and all of a sudden her body
Mm.
recovered because we were
Mm.
something was clearly wrong with us, but we didn't have a healthy family environment to diagnose that. We had a more like, oh, you're fat and ugly because you're stupid and lazy. That was the response, right? Not like
Ah, yeah.
maybe you're in pain because there's something wrong with you. No, that was never a question. If you were in pain, if you were unable to move or something, it's because you were, our dad's a piece of work, or he was a piece of work. He's a piece of work.
Mm.
So that when we didn't have support to diagnose anything and find out what could be wrong, right? And so she figured it out for herself. She got onto a healthy diet and tried to get me on the same one for years, but we couldn't afford it. We could only afford one person to be on that kind of. So she did help me find that my way through that path, and she went through the Golden Dawn as well, of course. And yeah, it was a discover journey of healing and recovery we both had to do physically and spiritually. And I don't know if she made it through spiritually, but physically at least she got into found her path in life through extreme sports and jumping off airplanes and cliffs, and
Mm.
found her way of to unite her body with spirit that way. Anyway, I haven't talked about my sister in a while, but it was the anniversary the other day, so forgive me for reminiscing on that change in my life.
Oh no, that's quite all right. I'm just sending a text to my daughter to
Oh,
let the dog
please do.
out,
Please do. Yeah,
because she was locked
we've
into
gone
my
far
bedroom to
longer.
stop her from barking.
I didn't expect
um,
you to have this much time to hang out with me, but it's been just such a treat. Just
I'm
a treat.
retired. I can spend as much time as I like. I didn't book anything else for today other than getting some errands done afterwards. Um, yeah, no, I still see the odd patient. I still do tarot readings. I've been doing professional tarot readings since, oh, when was it? 1985?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's sort of, now it's, I don't advertise or anything like that. It's just I see the odd person who finds me. I'm not pushing it, and I don't go to fairs and markets anymore because, they
Yeah.
sort of condense periods of time where you're doing a lot of readings. It can get quite exhausting.
Yeah.
Um, I might do the odd one every now and then, but at the moment, I'm quite happy just to wind it right down so I can focus on me and my books.
I'm very excited that are focused on you and your books, and because more books from you, I think is what we need. And the Jack Taylor one will be a treat, and whatever else your herbs and plants one would be great because we don't actually have much. Golden Dawn people don't usually do herbs and gemstone sort of type books, even though it's just as much a part of our tradition as it is a part of most traditions, I think, or even more so a part of our tradition than many others.
There's
Um,
a lot of good books on gemstones out for people to put to use, so I probably won't ever write anything on that, even though my house is full of stones and rocks and all sorts of amazing things I've picked up over the years. But the Herbs and Magic and Alchemy book, I was asked just recently to republish it. I was given an opportunity to do so. And I said no, because I was never that proud of it anyway, because it just wasn't to the standard I would have liked to have seen, because it was just a notebook for me. And I want to take that book and rehash it and add my journey with the liquid stone. So hopefully I will get that done before I fly off the twig. What I mean is pass away.
yeah, yeah, fly off
Like
the
a little
twig and
Tweety bird, you fly off the twig.
yeah, yeah, we
So that's one of my wishes to complete in sometime in the near future or sometime in the future. But I try to focus only on one at a time rather than have several going at once, because I've still
it's
got a
yeah.
study group I've got to do work for and prepare for and teach, and and I, am sort of a secretary of a couple of charitable societies and do work there. So it really is a lot of time's taken up doing lots of different things for people.
Hmm.
And so those, that plus Jack's book are the key priorities. Um, I'll see how I go with my future tarot work. So for the time being, the joint effort with Pat with the Magical Tarot of the Golden Dawn can be stand as it is. Even if I did do a tarot book in the future, I would not, what's the word? Uh, Not have it go in competition with the Magical Tarot of the Golden Dawn, but be additional.
Yeah. Well, that, yeah, of course.
And
Like
that would involve how to
we
color
would
the
love that.
cards with the proper color scales.
Yeah, that would be yeah, that would be so much fun. I mean, the fact that there's a that that opening for creativity when someone goes to color their cards is one of my favorite things. I love the little areas that are undefined in the system where clearly you're meant to bring your own creativity. Like to me, that's the I always say to my students, like ambiguity is your best friend, oftentimes, right? Because
Mm,
that there's actually ambiguity is an invitation for you to be creative and fill in some gaps that aren't really gaps. They're just for you to put yourself into them.
mm.
And the system
Yeah,
has so many beautiful little spots like that. And to see how, but then to get guidance from someone like you who has such a history with these cards, and you understand the way they're used also in the ceremonies, which a lot of people who are just approaching it as tarot readers wouldn't understand when it comes to the Golden Dawn's
mm,
view of the cards. And that adds a lot of dimensionality that you don't get from other systems, I think, because there is this whole constant understanding of the cards as being emblems of a larger journey of signposts along the way of up the tree, and that
yeah.
that gives a whole other dimension.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so basically to complement the other work rather than compete with it, it is just bringing in uh, a number of additional things that weren't in that book that could become. And that's just stuff that I've developed and done over the years and can share. I mean, the idea about the books is just to share things before I go so it's not lost.
absolutely, absolutely.
And that
And
that goes with my I mean, people could contradict what I say about how to color the cards. I mean, they could argue the scales, they could do all sorts, but it doesn't really matter. This is just my experience and I'm sharing it. That's about what I will do with the work I've got here. And I've got a few other things that I would like to share, which I won't put on public. I might speak privately with you one day about it. But um, I've got stuff that in connection to Vodi that may not be light bulb moments or amazing stuff, but it's history.
yeah.
Um, but not history. It's just it's not
Oh, I
not
know.
about history, but it is history
Yeah.
uh, that at this stage have not been published. So, and it's got nothing to do with order work either. So it's not interfering with anyone's private work or what they're presenting to the orders or anything like that. It's just something of interest. So, and those things landed at my doorstep in a box.
Oh, wow. It's good that people know whose doorstep to leave these boxes at.
Yeah, yeah. Even though I wasn't actually acknowledged and anyone wanting to get going with the temple here locally, um, I I must have been in the back of their minds as being a golden dawner. So when they
Yeah.
decided to get rid of these things they were hoarding, because they knew their time
Wow.
was just about up, they it landed on my doorstep. Yeah.
Well, that's very, very exciting. Yeah, I look forward to maybe hearing some whispers of what those things are. And as far as talking more about Golden Dawn stuff goes, you mentioned wanting to talk again in the future. Yeah, it's we can talk as whenever you want. Anytime you want to talk about any aspect of the Golden Dawn thing, you can just drop me a message and be like, "Hey, I'd love to have a little chat this month," and we can fire it up and just have a little chat. We could even do it live stream and have people, the Golden Dawn people, ask questions live if you wanted. Though I know that's being put on the spot a bit more and can be a bit,
Yeah, I don't
not
have a
as
great
fun.
memory.
It,
There'll be a lot
I
of silent moments while I'm digging into my archives.
I get it. I get it. I think I've yeah, yeah. I'm
I
at
mean,
the
if it's
stage where I still think I have a better
yeah,
memory than I do, but at the same time, I also have a better memory than I do, but I also don't. It's a strange stage to be at in hitting the mid
it is.
40s. The mid 40s, like you still feel like it still feels like I'm 30 easily, maybe 20, but I'm definitely not. You know, it's just like some things. Anyway, it's quite the journey, life, quite the journey. Um, it's we're only here for a spell, and but we can do some pretty magical things in that time. And I look forward to seeing the other magical things you're going to be doing and sharing with us. It's I hope I can speak on behalf of the community, saying how grateful I am that you've done this with your life and that you've dedicated so much of your life to this tradition, which for those of us who are in it, like it's really the fundamental thing that map that's led us through life. These ceremonies, these rituals, these this particular hermetic approach to God, which is the gnosis of life and light. If you go back to the original Hermetica, right, it's about awakening ourselves to the nous, the higher consciousness, which is the same as God's consciousness. So therefore, through our nous, we can know all things that are known to God or go all places. They were just saying this even back in third century Alexandria. Once you've awakened to your higher consciousness, the Hermetic writer says you can travel anywhere, you can know anything. I always thought that was an
Yeah, that's true.
exaggeration. I always thought it was a
It
slight
is.
exaggeration until I heard these telepathy tapes and these autistic kids who are apparently all telepathic and traveling around the world talking to each other. I don't know if you've checked that out, but if you want to go down a rabbit
No,
hole,
I haven't. No.
it's not even rabbit hole really. It's just sort of a let's it's the biggest thing in the world right now, in a way.
Mm.
The telepathy tapes. You just have to listen to them all and then you'll see what people are talking about. It's crazy. It looks what it looks to be like either it's the biggest hoax of all time or all non-speaking autistic kids with atraxia, so they don't speak. All of them are telepathic and all of them can travel and know things. Like either that or it's the biggest hoax ever
It's a natural
perpetrated.
talent that we've all got, but most people
Well,
have it locked away.
yeah, so what it looks like is that autistic kids who can't speak might have that on superpower level, 100%
Yeah.
accuracy. Like, and that's not a surprise to people like me or you. Of course, you say that to a materialist and they're like, "No, this must be categorically wrong. They must be being it's a hoax. They're probably being abused. It's not good." But it's like, let's find out. Let's find out, if you have 100% psychism being demonstrated by hundreds of autistic kids, it is testable, and they are doing it right now. It's being the Faraday cages and everything. The documentary is going to come out, but for those who haven't heard the podcast recordings, there's 8 episodes. It is beautifully done, and the stories of these kids is amazing. And it's really it's a journey. I
Oh,
highly
send a
recommend
link.
you check that out. Yeah, I will send a link for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I got to mention this to you because people need to check it out. I mean, again, for us, what it did for me is it made me realize like I thought there was just a very low limit, like coming out of especially the Rudolf Steiner school and anthroposophy. I was very awakened to my astral and psychical senses at a very young age. But excuse me for that. One sec. Just turning off the. Sorry, I didn't turn off my phone ringer. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I just thought growing up in the Steiner school that psychical skills were natural to everybody. Just I didn't think they could go very far or do very much. Not to the extent that it seems like, not to the extent that, you could know anything or go anywhere and be 100% accurate. And certainly I can't do that with 100% accuracy, but it looks like these autistic kids might be able to, or certainly can,
Oh,
including
yeah.
talk
I
to
mean,
talk to
goodness.
dead people. Like some of their answers, like too, ring with, like they have things to teach us. Like their answers about past lives. Here's what they said about past lives. No, you don't have past lives or future lives because in that state, outside of mortal reality, time isn't really there, right? Time space is not really the same thing. And so you're actually living those lives now, and what you do in those lives can affect this one, and this one can affect those ones, all happening now somehow, which of course is impossible for us to wrap our head around. But that's the kind of answer I would expect from someone who's legit versus, phony baloney. Right. That's
Mm.
that who's just like, yes, you were Cleopatra. And it's like, no, maybe hundreds of us were Cleopatra. Maybe we were all Cleopatra, but we weren't then, but we are now. Maybe we're all Cleopatra right now.
Oh, look, there's so many people said they were Cleopatra. I mean, I
Exactly.
reached a point it was just totally ridiculous. I mean, one lady came up to me and said, I've got 72 guides. And I said, oh, really? I said, I thought you only needed one.
That would change the hermit card, right? If there's like 72 hermits, they're all like, hey, this is my rock. Get off. We're gonna, oh, falling off.
I decided she was nutty and I went back to my tarot reading.
Well, I've met a lot of people who were
Oh.
like, you meet a lot of Moinas and McGregors out there, of course. And I always, my take, and no one's ever had a good response to this. It's like if you are saying you're Mathers or Moina Mathers or one of these people who supposedly are meant to have completed their work, don't you find it slightly insulting to insinuate that they failed in their entire, like if you hold these people to such high regard that you would want to be their reincarnation, don't you find it a little odd that you would then say, yes, they were this amazing person, but they failed and they got reincarnated as me. Like,
Yeah, well,
like
that's true.
it's
Yeah.
like I'm a big Yeats fan. I'm a complete nut for W.B. Yeats. But the idea that I would have a belief in which he somehow failed to complete his work in life and achieve what I believe he achieved, and which is hopefully the union with his higher consciousness and the journeying onward to the next sphere of reality. I the idea of me saying, "Oh no, he failed and now he's me." It
Mm.
seems so
Mm.
distasteful to me, but at the same time, I can understand why people would identify so strongly with their heroes. But yet, why would they then disparage their heroes to claim that their heroes failed at moving on from this mortal coil? And, you know, yeah,
One would hope that each, even if it was all happening at once, but each incarnation, let's still use that term, you are either going into another realm of experience or you are adding on to what you did. You know, take for example, just my own experiences. I had done no study whatsoever of esoteric work. Pat was putting papers in front of me that he had researched something and then tried to wrote a paper on it, like a page, and he'd shove it in front of me, and I would immediately know what the heck he was talking about. I would understand it and even be able to correct something on it. Now, how did that happen if I had no experience in the situation? I must have known it before. So one hopes that that is what was really happening, and I just wasn't just quick off the mark reading stuff. Who knows? I just
I
knew
do.
things.
Yeah,
Once
right.
I was told about them, I knew them and I knew the in-depths to them. And I can look behind something and see its purpose, its cause, and everything else that's involved in it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I would used to get spirits to tell me answers to like complex math geometry questions in high school until like the Waldorf school teacher actually had to tell me to stop. He's like, I wasn't sure what you were doing, but now I am because you just wrote the answer to this question and this one question no one else got right. So I know you're not cheating, but you can't do it this way. You have to learn how to think this way, how to think through the problem and solve it. You can't just do whatever it is you're doing. And of course, they're anthroposophists, so they knew exactly what I was doing. Um, you
Mm.
know, we talked about that stuff a lot in Waldorf school. If you wanted to, they didn't push that kiss stuff on anyone, of course. That's not what they're interested in at all. But if you are interested in it, they'll talk to you about it. If they're also interested, not all teachers are, but yeah, and it was very strange to realize, like, yeah, there's different ways of knowing, and Steiner really did get that. And I think the challenge, I think today, especially with the rise of AI, is like how are we gonna take responsibility for the different ways of knowing that we have? We have these devices in our hands. We have interconnectivity between everyone on the planet, right? Never in my life, in a million years, would I have ever expected that you and I would be looking at each other and talking face to face, as it were, ever. Like when
Well,
your
I
Enochian
think
chess book came out in '94, my coven bought it. We bought it. Me and my best friend went to the store and we we bought that book along with a few others on Enochian and had a look at it. And we're like, oh, okay, we're 14. This is a bit beyond us, but we enjoyed it, you know. And I think, we got Enochian physics by the Schulers as well, which was odd. That was a very strange book, Enochian
it wasn't
physics.
wrton that great. When I rewrote that
No.
book, I
Oh, your
realized how
book?
bad my grammar was.
Oh, I think your book wasn't that. You know,
I
the
wasn't
the
bad, but
the.
honestly, I had to make a lot of
Did
improvements
you
when I
improve it a
rewrote it.
lot? Well, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's good to know. People, go get Enochian Chess of the Golden Dawn,
Well, the thing is, the
a
more you do
four-handed
these things,
chess
the better you
game.
get at it.
Yeah, well,
Let's put it that
of
way.
course. I mean, it was. I remember in the '90s. What the challenging aspect of your Enochian chess book was not your grammar. It was the system itself of Enochian, which to a
Mm.
13, 14, 15-year-old
Unfortunately,
kid
there were
is
some
quite
errors in it.
daunting
Yeah, unfortunately, there were some errors in it. I
in the
had sent the
original.
corrections to the publishers, but they did not make the corrections. And so that was a bit embarrassing. There was a problem with the looping formula of the Yod Hey Vohe when it was just when the diagrams were put in. I've corrected all that, in the revised edition. So those old
Beautiful,
errors have been corrected.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's now you can get it now in hardcover. So it's a beautiful cover. Was this Paula who helped you with the art, I believe? Nick Farrell's
Um,
wife?
I'm sure that looks like her work. Nick put together the cover for me.
Okay, Nick did
Uh,
that.
so I
Yeah.
presume he's taken it from some of Paula's work and thrown it together digitally. He did a beautiful job there. He's been very, very helpful with these things. So, this he
Yeah.
certainly is has some, needs some credit. Darcy did a lot of work on helping me get the chess book together, and so he certainly deserves credit as well.
Darcy, yeah. Have you, when did you first get in touch with Darcy Kuntz?
2017, like I said, there was a few people started talking to me, a number of people, but I filtered out the good from the bad, or let's just say those that I felt comfortable with, and that I felt I could trust. And so, those individuals that I have continued communicating with, they have been very trustworthy. And uh, yeah, so it's been great to have communications with people of like mind instead of being isolated like I had been for so many years, because even in the other group that I was involved with, there was not that stimulation that I needed
Mm,
of discussions on things of like mind. Yeah.
great. Well, I
And
hope
I
this,
I just worked on my own all those years and gone through my own growth and mystical experiences. That's another thing. Just before we go, we could probably do
yeah,
another talk another day on it. Is about
yeah.
being the grade. If anyone thinks they are the grade once they've been initiated, they're wrong. You become the grade during the grade, and life happens.
Yeah.
Let's leave it on that note. And that was what was happening with me all those years with the higher grades.
Oh, oh my God. That is such a powerful lesson to end this on. And yeah, it's I c- I can add nothing to that except silence.
I do have to go because the kittens need to be brought in here to be fed.
So shall we say farewell with the sign of silence then?
Okay.
Thanks for being on this podcast with me today, Christine. I hope it's not your last podcast with out here in the world. And yeah. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you really soon. Thanks everyone for listening, and like and subscribe and all that stuff on YouTube, please. Thank you very much, and take the lesson of silence into your lives. All right. Farewell. Talk to you soon.